What defines a person's worth? Is it the empire they build, the power they wield, or the zeros in their bank account? For Marcus Thornton, a man who could reshape entire industries with a single decision, the answer had always been success, achievement, the measurable, the quantifiable, the undeniable proof of a life well lived. Until one rain-soaked night in a forgotten corner of the city he owned, he discovered that all his billions couldn't buy him the one thing he'd lost along the way: his humanity. The rain fell on Seattle with a vengeance that Wednesday evening. Not the gentle mist the city was famous for, but a hard, percussive drumming that seemed determined to wash the color from the world. From his penthouse apartment on the 58th floor of the Rainier Summit Tower, Marcus Thornton watched the city dissolve into a watercolor blur of neon and asphalt. Below, the world scurried and hustled, a million lives intersecting in the wet darkness. Up here, there was only the sound of the rain and the sterile hum of climate control. At 32, Marcus was the architect of his own gilded cage. His company, Synapse Dynamics, had revolutionized data compression technology, making him a billionaire before his 30th birthday. He had everything a man was supposed to want: a portfolio that dwarfed the GDP of small nations, a collection of vintage cars he never drove, each one a masterpiece of engineering that spent its days gathering dust in a climate-controlled garage. A contact list filled with the most powerful names in technology and finance, thousands of connections, and not a single friend. What he didn't have, he realized as he stood in the cathedral of his success, was a single person to call just to hear their voice. No one who would ask how he really was and wait for an honest answer. No one who remembered him before the money, before the fame, before he became Marcus Thornton the brand instead of Marcus the person. The penthouse was immaculate and empty. The silence was deafening. His phone buzzed. Jessica, his ever-efficient assistant. "Mr. Thornton, the car is ready for the fundraiser. Shall I have them bring it around?" He stared at the message. Another gala. Another night of forced smiles and vapid conversations with people who wanted something from him. Another evening of being Marcus Thornton, the brand, instead of just Marcus. The thought made something in his chest tighten like a fist. "Cancel my appearance," he typed back. "Tell them something came up, something unavoidable." The silence that followed was more telling than any protest. Marcus Thornton did not cancel. He did not deviate from the schedule. He was a machine of productivity and predictability. But tonight, something had broken. He shrugged off his tailored suit jacket and reached for something he hadn't worn in years. His mother's old rain slicker, the one she'd bought him for his first semester at MIT. It still smelled faintly of her perfume, even after all this time. Even after the 5 years since she died while he was in Tokyo, closing a merger that had added another billion to his net worth. His hand hesitated on the doorknob of his closet. There, on the shelf, was a framed photo he'd turned face down but never quite managed to throw away. His mother, smiling at the camera, her eyes crinkled with joy. That photo had been taken on her 65th birthday. He'd sent flowers and a card from Singapore, along with a generous check that she'd never cashed. She'd called to thank him, her voice warm despite the distance between them, and told him the only gift she really wanted was to see him. He'd promised to visit soon. That was 3 weeks before the cancer diagnosis came. The doctor said she had maybe a year with treatment. She lasted 6 months, and when the end came, he'd been in Tokyo, in a conference room on the 42nd floor of a building that overlooked the Imperial Palace, discussing quarterly projections with executives whose names he couldn't remember now. His assistant had interrupted, pale-faced, with a message from the hospital. "Your mother is asking for you. You need to come now." He'd looked at the faces around the table, at the merger documents spread before him, at the numbers that represented hundreds of millions of dollars in value creation, and he'd made a choice. Just another hour, he'd told himself. Just close this deal, then I'll take the company jet. Just one more hour. By the time he landed in Seattle, she was gone. The last words she'd heard from him were through a nurse's cell phone speaker. "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm coming." But he hadn't come in time, and that failure, that unforgivable absence, haunted him more than any business setback ever could. What would she think of me now? The thought arrived unbidden, sharp as broken glass. Would she be proud of the empire? Or would she see what he saw when he looked in the mirror? A man who'd gained everything and lost what mattered most. He grabbed the slicker and a plain baseball cap, leaving his wallet behind and taking only a few $100 bills from his desk drawer. Tonight, he wanted to be anonymous. A ghost in his own city. The elevator descended 58 floors in a whisper of polished steel and silence. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and intimidatingly expensive floral arrangements. The doorman, a stoic man named George who'd worked the building for 20 years, rushed forward with an absurdly large umbrella. "Mr. Thornton, your car's waiting." "Not tonight, George, I'm walking." He stepped out into the deluge before the man could protest, and the shock of cold, wet air hit him like a slap. A welcome one. He walked without direction, letting the rain soak through his jeans, the water seeping into his leather shoes. He passed Michelin-starred restaurants with valets huddled under awnings, trendy bars pulsing with music and laughter, theaters spilling well-dressed patrons onto the wet pavement. None of it appealed to him. He turned down a side street, then another, watching the towering glass and steel of the financial district give way to older brick buildings with faded signs. It was here, in this neighborhood that progress had forgotten, that he saw it. The corner spoon. The neon sign was a disaster of burnt-out letters. The C and the R in corner had given up the ghost years ago. Steam clouded the large front windows, promising warmth and refuge from the storm. It was the kind of place he and his mother used to go to on Saturday mornings, back when the world was smaller, and success meant making her laugh. On impulse, he pushed open the door. A small bell chimed, announcing his arrival to the handful of patrons scattered in worn vinyl booths. The air was thick with the smell of frying bacon, old coffee, and damp wool. A couple of grizzled truck drivers occupied the counter. A young student hunched over a laptop in the corner. An elderly woman nursed a cup of tea, her weathered hands wrapped around the ceramic for warmth. It was perfect, anonymous, real. Marcus slid into a booth in the back, the cracked red vinyl sighing under his weight. He picked up the plastic-coated menu, its corners soft with use. The prices were from another decade. He could buy the entire diner's inventory for the week with the cash in his pocket. "Be with you in a sec, hun." The voice came from behind the counter, and Marcus looked up. The world stopped. The voice belonged to a waitress who was deftly clearing a table near the window, her movements efficient and practiced, despite the clear exhaustion in her posture. She wore a simple, slightly too large black polo shirt, with the diner's faded logo embroidered on it, and her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a messy but functional ponytail. Strands had escaped, clinging to her temples. She carried herself with a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with the grease-stained apron tied around her waist. But it was her face that stopped his heart. He would know that face anywhere, even a decade older, even carved thin by whatever life had thrown at her. The cheekbones were more pronounced now, and there were faint lines of worry around her eyes that hadn't been there before. But the eyes themselves, a startling shade of green, were the same. The determined set of her jaw was the same. It was Elena Hartley. A flood of memories crashed over him, so potent they left him dizzy. Northwood High School, class of 2011. Elena Hartley wasn't just some girl from his past. She had been his equal, his rival, the only person who could match him thought for thought in every class they shared. In AP Physics, they'd battled for the top grade with a competitive intensity that left the rest of the class in the dust. In debate club, they'd been formidable partners and even fiercer opponents. She was brilliant, with a razor-sharp wit and an artistic soul that seemed at odds with her analytical mind. While he was a math and science prodigy, Elena was a true polymath, acing calculus while sketching masterpieces in the margins of her notebook. He remembered her dreams, spoken with a passion that had both intimidated and fascinated him. She was going to attend the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. She was going to become a world-renowned painter or a graphic designer who would change the face of advertising. She spoke of art with a fervor that made it sound like a calling, not just a career. There had been an unspoken current between them, a magnetic pull of two minds operating on a similar frequency. They'd spent countless hours in the library, ostensibly studying but really just existing in each other's orbit. He remembered the comfortable silences, the way she could sketch while he coded, and neither felt the need to fill the space with meaningless words. He remembered, with painful clarity, buying a ticket to senior prom and spending 2 weeks working up the courage to ask her, only to chicken out at the last moment. The opportunity had slipped away, lost to teenage cowardice and the fear that someone as vibrant as Elena would never choose someone as awkward as him. And now here she was, in a greasy spoon diner, her hands that he remembered holding delicate paintbrushes and fine-tipped charcoals now gripping dirty plates and coffee pots. The artist who was supposed to take the world by storm was asking a truck driver if he wanted a refill. She turned, her eyes scanning the room, and for a terrifying second they met his. He quickly looked down at his menu, his heart pounding like a drum solo. Did she recognize him? He risked a glance up. No. Her gaze had already moved on, her expression a practiced mask of professional neutrality. Of course she didn't recognize him. He was just another customer, a shadow in a dark booth. The awkward, lanky tech geek from high school was gone, replaced by a man forged in boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. He looked different. He was different. She approached his table, a small notepad in her hand, and a tired smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sorry about the wait. What can I get for you? Up close, he could see the reality of her situation more clearly. The faint smudges of dark circles under those green eyes. The small, pale scar on her forearm, probably from a burn from the grill. Her fingernails were clean, but cut short, practical. There was a weariness in her that went bone deep, the kind that comes from years of carrying weight that should have been shared. Coffee, he managed to say, his voice rougher than he intended. Black. Coming right up, she said, scribbling it down without looking at him again before turning on her heel and heading back to the counter. He watched her go, his mind a maelstrom of questions. What happened? What happened to RISD? What happened to the fire, the dreams, the unstoppable force that was Elena Hartley? How does a star that bright just vanish? He stayed for over an hour, nursing the same cup of bitter coffee, watching her work with the focused attention he usually reserved for market analysis. He saw the way she moved through the diner, anticipating needs before they were voiced, refilling the truck driver's water glass the moment it was half empty, bringing extra napkins to the student who just spilled coffee on his notes. Small acts of care that cost her nothing but meant everything to people who lived on the margins like she did. He saw the way she gave the elderly woman, whose name tag on her worn coat read Martha, a free slice of pie. She didn't make a show of it, just slid the plate onto the table and leaned in close to whisper something. From where Marcus sat, he could see Martha's eyes well with tears, see her reach out to squeeze Elena's hand in gratitude. "Don't you worry about it, Martha," Elena said, her voice soft but carrying in the quiet diner. "You need something sweet today." The interaction lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it said everything about who Elena was. She'd been ground down by circumstance, but not broken. The kindness was still there, even when she had so little to give. He saw the way her smile, though tired, was genuine when she bantered with the truck drivers. She knew their names, knew their usual orders, asked about their families with real interest, not the performative courtesy of someone just working for tips. One of them, a grizzled man with hands like leather, told her about his daughter's college acceptance, and Elena's face lit up with such pure joy that Marcus felt something crack in his chest. "That's wonderful," she said. "You must be so proud." The man beamed, and Marcus understood. Elena made people feel seen. Even now, exhausted and struggling, she had that gift. And he saw something else, something that made the coffee turn to acid in his stomach and rage simmer in his veins. The manager emerged from a back office, a portly man with a sweaty brow and a name tag that read Patterson. Doug Patterson. Marcus watched as the man surveyed his domain, his eyes landing on Elena with an expression that made Marcus's skin crawl. Patterson made his way to the coffee station where Elena was preparing a fresh pot, and Marcus saw her body language change instantly. Her shoulders tensed. Her movements became more deliberate, more careful, like an animal that had sensed a predator. Patterson positioned himself too close, his proximity a violation of every boundary of professional conduct. Marcus couldn't hear the words over the clatter of dishes and low hum of conversation, but he could see everything he needed to see. Patterson's eyes roaming over her like she was property to be appraised. The smug leer on his face as he leaned in, one hand braced against the wall beside her head, physically trapping her against the counter. His other hand gesturing as he spoke, occasionally drifting too close to her waist, her shoulder, violations disguised as casual touch. Elena's subtle but firm lean away, her body angled as far from him as the small space allowed. Her jaw tightening, the muscle there jumping as she clenched her teeth, her face becoming a stony mask of controlled disgust and resigned endurance. She said something short and clipped, her posture rigid, her hands gripping the coffee pot so hard her knuckles went white. Then she brushed past him with more force than necessary to grab a fresh pot of coffee, and Marcus saw it, the flash of something in her eyes. Not just disgust, helplessness, the look of someone who's been fighting the same battle for too long and knows that complaining means losing the only income keeping her family afloat. Patterson watched her walk away, adjusting his belt with one hand, that nasty smirk playing on his lips. He said something to another waitress, a woman in her 40s who quickly looked away and busied herself with wiping down a table. The waitress knew. They all knew, and they all endured it because they had no choice. Patterson disappeared back into his office, completely unaware that he'd just been witnessed by someone who had both the resources and the will to end him. Rage, cold and pure, unlike anything Marcus had felt in a corporate takeover, pulsed through his veins. The sight of that man disrespecting her, of Elena having to endure that indignity just to earn a living, was more than he could bear. This was not a situation for a simple handout. Throwing money at this would be an insult to the proud girl he remembered. And it wouldn't fix the root problem. It wouldn't restore her dignity. No, this required something else. A plan. A real one. When Elena brought his check, he placed $200 bills on the table. It was far too much for a $3 cup of coffee. But it was all the cash he had on him. She saw the money and her eyes widened slightly. A crack in that professional mask. "Sir, I can't break this. The register doesn't have enough." "It's not for you to break," he said, keeping his voice low and his face angled down, the brim of his cap hiding his features. "It's for you, and for Martha's pie." And before she could protest, he slid out of the booth and walked toward the door, his cap pulled low. "Sir, wait," she called after him, but he didn't turn around. He pushed the door open and stepped back into the relentless Seattle rain, the diner's bell chiming his departure. He wasn't just a ghost anymore. He was a man with a mission. The puzzle of Elena Hartley's fallen star was one he was going to solve. And as for Mr. Patterson, Marcus made a quiet, chilling promise to himself. The man's day of reckoning was coming. Sleep was a stranger to Marcus Thornton that night. The sterile silence of his penthouse felt oppressive, the panoramic view of the city lights mocking him with their cold beauty. The image of Elena's tired face was seared into his mind, a stark contrast to the vibrant, ambitious girl he remembered. The girl who had once, during a particularly heated debate about astrophysics, called him a beautiful but soulless calculator. He'd been offended at the time. Now, surrounded by his beautiful, soulless possessions, the insult felt more like prophecy. By 5 a.m, he was in his home office, the city still cloaked in darkness beyond his windows. He wasn't a man who left things to chance. He hadn't built synapse dynamics on impulse. He'd built it on data, on understanding every variable, on knowing more than his competitors. He needed to understand Elena's story, all of it, every detail, every choice, every sacrifice. He made a call to a number not listed in any directory. "Arthur, it's Marcus." Thomas Webb was a man who moved in the shadows. Officially a risk management consultant, he was in reality the most discreet and effective private investigator on the West Coast. He had handled sensitive corporate espionage cases and delicate personal matters for Marcus for years, always with surgical precision and absolute confidentiality. "Marcus, it's early even for you." Webb's gravelly voice came through the encrypted line, alert despite the hour. "Let me guess. Hostile takeover attempt from a rival in Shanghai?" "Something more important," Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I need a full, comprehensive, and utterly discreet background file on an individual." Elena Hartley, approximately 32 years old, graduated Northwood High, class of 2011. Last known employment, waitress at the Corner Spoon Diner on Pike Street. There was a pause. Webb was likely surprised by the nature of the request. He was used to investigating corporate titans and foreign agents, not waitresses. "Discreet is my middle name," Webb said. "What am I looking for?" "Everything," Marcus commanded, staring out at the lightening sky. "I want to know what happened to her after high school." University records, family status, financial history, medical records if you can get them legally. "I want to know why a student who was accepted to RISD on a full scholarship is serving coffee in a dive. I want to know about her family, her parents, any siblings. And Arthur," he added, his voice softening. "Be gentle. This is not a hostile subject. This is delicate." "Understood," Webb said. "You'll have a preliminary report by end of day." The day that followed was a blur of meetings Marcus barely registered. He sat through quarterly projections and marketing strategy sessions, nodding at the appropriate moments, asking questions that proved he was listening. But his mind was miles away. In a greasy spoon diner, watching a ghost from his past refill coffee cups and endure the lecherous attention of a small-time tyrant. His team noticed his distraction. His CFO asked if he was feeling all right. His head of product development inquired if there was trouble with the board. He brushed them all off with practiced ease, but inside, a tectonic shift was occurring. For the first time in a decade, something mattered more than synapse dynamics. Someone mattered more. True to his word, at precisely 5 in the afternoon, a secure file appeared in Marcus's private inbox. The subject line was simple. Report on E. Hartley. Marcus dismissed his last meeting, locked his office door, and poured himself a glass of water. His hand, he noticed, was not quite steady. He sat down at his desk and opened the file. What he read, page by methodical page, dismantled his understanding of the world. It was a story not of failure, but of sacrifice, of a young woman who had given up everything, not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to carry the weight of an entire family on her shoulders. The report began as he expected. Elena had indeed been accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design with a prestigious academic and art scholarship. Her portfolio, according to the admissions notes Webb had somehow obtained, was described as prodigious and singularly brilliant, with an emotional depth unusual for someone so young. She had attended for 1 semester. Her grades were immaculate, perfect scores in every class. Her professors' comments were glowing. "This student is destined for greatness," one had written. "She sees the world differently than the rest of us." Then the story turned. In the middle of her 2nd semester, her father, David Hartley, a mild-mannered architect who had designed several notable buildings in the Seattle area, had been diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. It was a rare degenerative nerve disorder that attacked the peripheral nervous system. The progression was aggressive. Within months, David Hartley went from a man who sketched beautiful buildings to a man who could barely hold a pencil. He was unable to work, unable to provide. The family's health insurance, a standard policy that had seemed adequate, had a laughably low lifetime cap for chronic conditions. The costs were astronomical: specialist visits, physical therapy, experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. They drained the family's savings first, then their retirement funds, then the equity in their modest home. Elena had tried to stay at RISD, taking on part-time jobs, working herself to exhaustion. But the distance from Seattle and the mounting stress were too much. The report included a copy of her withdrawal letter to the university, obtained through Webb's connections. It was brief, formal, and heartbreaking in its simplicity. "To whom it may concern, due to a severe family medical emergency, I am forced to withdraw from my attendance indefinitely. I hope to return when circumstances allow. Sincerely, Elena Hartley." She had come home. She had a younger brother, Ryan, who was still in high school at the time. Their mother, Margaret, was working double shifts as a nurse. But it wasn't enough. Elena had taken on the burden of being her father's primary caregiver. She was 19 years old. The report detailed a decade of grinding survival, a string of jobs, each one a step down from the last. each one chosen not for advancement or passion, but for flexibility and immediate income. Barista at a coffee shop near the hospital so she could bring her father to appointments between shifts, working the early morning rush before racing to physical therapy sessions. Office temp work that paid slightly better but offered no benefits and no security, never knowing if she'd have work the next week. Retail clerk during the holidays for extra cash, standing for 12-hour shifts and coming home with feet so swollen she had to soak them in ice water. And finally, for the past 2 years, 2 jobs running concurrently. Mornings at a dry cleaner, breathing in chemical fumes from 5 a.m. until noon. Nights at the corner spoon, serving food until closing, then cleaning tables and mopping floors until past midnight. She worked nearly 80 hours a week, sometimes more. Her days off were spent at her father's medical appointments, or filling out insurance paperwork, or researching new treatments that might slow the progression of his disease. Webb had included bank statements, obtained through methods Marcus knew better than to ask about. They painted a brutal picture, every paycheck deposited and immediately allocated. Rent, utilities, father's medication, physical therapy co-pays, groceries bought on sale, nothing left over. No savings, no buffer. One missed paycheck away from catastrophe, always. Their family home, the one her father had designed himself with wide windows to let in natural light, and an airy studio space where Elena could paint, had been sold 3 years ago. They now lived in a small rented apartment in a neighborhood that the report delicately described as economically challenged. Webb had driven by. His notes said, 2-bedroom unit, 4th floor walk-up, bars on the windows, laundromat in the basement, sounds of arguments through thin walls. This is where a genius lives now. Every dollar Elena earned went toward her father's ongoing care and her brother Ryan's education. She'd insisted he go to college, insisted he take every opportunity she'd lost. She worked herself to exhaustion so he could attend the University of Washington, so he could live in the dorms instead of commuting, so he could focus on his studies instead of working full-time like she had. Ryan had just graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in computer science, debt-free, thanks entirely to his sister, who had worked herself into the ground to ensure he had the opportunities she'd lost. Webb had found Ryan's graduation speech, posted on the university's website. In it, Ryan had thanked his parents for their support, and his sister for her sacrifice. He'd broken down crying at the podium, unable to finish his prepared remarks, and the video showed Elena in the audience, tears streaming down her face, clapping until her hands must have hurt. She had sacrificed her future for his. She'd been 19 years old when she made that choice. She was 32 now. 13 years of her life given without hesitation, without complaint, without any expectation of reward. Marcus read that line again, his vision blurring. Hot, angry tears pricked at his eyes. Tears for the cosmic injustice of it all. The sheer, crushing unfairness. The world had taken the most vibrant person he had ever known and tried to grind her into dust. But she hadn't broken. She had bent under the weight, but she had not snapped. She had shielded her family with her own body, taking every blow meant for them. The report also contained a section on Doug Patterson, and it was ugly. A string of complaints from former female employees, all quietly settled by the diner's owner to avoid trouble. Harassment, wage theft, verbal abuse. He was a small tyrant in a small kingdom, preying on those who had no other options. Women like Elena, who needed every paycheck and couldn't afford to fight back. Marcus closed the file. A cold, hard resolve was solidifying in his chest, like ice forming over a lake. His initial plan had been to help her. Now, his plan was to restore her. He needed to give her back the life that had been stolen from her, piece by piece, year by year. Not the exact life, that was impossible, but the opportunity to build a new one, on her terms, with her gifts. But how? A direct cash infusion was still off the table. He knew the Elena from high school would have been mortified by charity. The woman she was now, forged in the crucible of hardship and sacrifice, would be downright insulted. Pride, he suspected, was the only thing she had left that was truly hers. He wouldn't be the one to take it from her. He paced his office as the city lights began to glitter outside. the sun setting on another day in his gilded cage. He needed to offer her not a handout, but a hand up. An opportunity so perfectly tailored to her skills, so undeniably legitimate, that her pride would allow her to accept it. It had to be real. It had to be earned. It had to be hers. He thought back to her art, the sketches she used to make in the margins of her notebooks. They were more than just pretty pictures. They were designs, concepts, visual representations of abstract ideas. She had a unique ability to take something intangible and make it visible, make it understood. She didn't just draw people, she drew emotions, systems, connections. An idea sparked, audacious and unconventional, but it felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. Synapse Dynamics had the philanthropic arm, the Synapse Foundation, which he had funded generously but largely ignored. It supported STEM education and tech startups in underserved communities. It was worthy work, but it lacked something essential. It had no soul, no visual identity, no story that connected with people on a human level. It was, much like him, a beautiful but soulless calculator, all function and no feeling. He picked up his phone and called the director of the foundation, a sharp, compassionate woman named Dr. Sarah Chen. Dr. Chen, this is Marcus Thornton. I apologize for the late call. Mr. Thornton, it's never too late. What can I do for you? I'm restructuring the foundation's public outreach, he said, the plan crystallizing as he spoke. We're launching a new initiative focused on the intersection of art and technology. I want a complete visual rebranding, new logo, new design language, new narrative that actually connects our mission to the real world, to real people. That's exciting, Dr. Chen said, her interest clearly piqued. Do you have a timeline in mind? Aggressive, he said, and I'm creating a new position to lead it. Lead concept artist and brand strategist, senior executive level. I have the only candidate in mind. I've discovered an artist with a unique background. Her early work showed incredible promise, and I believe her life experience will give the foundation the authenticity and depth it's been lacking. That's quite a departure from our usual hiring process, Dr. Chen said carefully. May I ask who this candidate is? Her name is Elena Hartley. I want you to prepare an offer. Generous, 6-figure salary, full executive benefits package including our top-tier family medical plan, relocation assistance if needed, signing bonus, the works. Mr. Thornton, with all due respect, to offer that kind of package to someone without vetting, without a formal search, she is not an unknown to me, Marcus cut in, his voice firm but not unkind. This is not a debate, Sarah. I need you to trust me on this. Find any old online portfolios of hers you can dig up. Anything from her RISD days, any student work that might still be floating around on the internet. Use that as the official discovery pretense. I will handle the initial approach myself. Just have the offer letter ready to go by tomorrow morning. He hung up the phone before she could raise more objections. The plan was in motion. He would approach Elena not as Marcus Thornton, the billionaire ghost from her past, but as Marcus Thornton, the CEO of Synapse Dynamics, who had, by a stroke of luck and good research, stumbled upon her forgotten talent. It was a lie, a carefully constructed fiction, but it was a lie in the service of a greater truth, restoring a brilliant artist to her rightful place, giving her back the choice that circumstances had stolen. And as for Mr. Doug Patterson, Marcus made one more call. This one was to his chief legal counsel. David, he said, his voice dropping to an icy calm that his lawyer knew meant someone was about to have a very bad day. I want you to look into the owner of a diner called the Corner Spoon on Pike Street. I want every health code violation, every labor law infringement, every skeleton in every closet. And I want you to find out who owns the building the diner leases. If it's for sale, I want to buy it. If it's not for sale, I want to make an offer they can't refuse. And then I want to find grounds to terminate their lease. Immediately. Consider it done, his lawyer said. The game was afoot. And Marcus Thornton, for the first time in a very long time, felt like he was playing for something that actually mattered. Not market share, not quarterly earnings, but for a person, for justice, for the chance to right a wrong that had been committed not by him, but by a world that valued the wrong things. He looked out at the city lights one more time. Somewhere out there, Elena Hartley was probably finishing her shift at the diner, her feet aching, her back sore, heading home to care for a father whose illness had cost her everything. She had no idea that her life was about to change, that a ghost from her past had found her, that someone remembered who she used to be and was determined to help her become who she was always meant to be. Tomorrow, he would walk into that diner again. But this time, he wouldn't be a silent observer. This time, he would speak. And what he had to say would alter the course of both their lives forever. In the rain-soaked streets of Seattle, in a city built on innovation and ambition, two people were about to collide. One who had gained the whole world but lost his soul, and one who had lost everything but kept her spirit intact. Their reunion would not be gentle. It would not be simple, but it would be the beginning of something neither of them expected. Redemption for both of them. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, preparing the ground for what was to come. And in his tower of glass and steel, Marcus Thornton finally allowed himself to hope, not for profit or power, but for connection, for meaning, for the chance to use his resources to do something that actually mattered. He thought about his mother, about the last conversation they'd had. She'd asked him what made him happy, and he talked about the company, about innovation, about changing the world through technology. She'd listened patiently, then said something he dismissed at the time but couldn't forget now. "Marcus, honey, you're building wonderful things. But are you building a wonderful life? Buildings are empty without people to fill them. Success is empty without someone to share it with." He'd laughed it off, promised her he'd find balance eventually, told her he was too busy right now, but maybe later, maybe when the company was more stable, maybe after the next round of funding. There was always a maybe later, until there wasn't. Elena Hartley had saved her family at the cost of her own dreams. She'd chosen people over potential, love over ambition, sacrifice over self. And she'd done it without fanfare, without recognition, without anyone even knowing her name. That was real strength. That was real success. Not the kind that came with magazine covers and keynote speeches, but the kind that came with quiet dignity and the knowledge that you'd done right by the people you loved. Now, whether she knew it or not, she was about to save him too. Save him from becoming a cautionary tale. A man who had everything and nothing. A brilliant mind in an empty life. Tomorrow would be the beginning. Tomorrow he would offer her a choice. Not charity, but opportunity. Not rescue, but partnership. And together, maybe they could build something that mattered. Something his mother would have been proud of. Something that would prove that success wasn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched, in dignity restored, in potential unlocked. The ghost had found the ghost, and neither of them would be invisible anymore. 2 days passed like years. Marcus spent them in meetings he couldn't focus on, conversations he couldn't track, decisions that felt meaningless compared to the weight of what he was about to do. His team noticed. His CFO asked if he was feeling well. His head of operations suggested he take a vacation. He brushed them all off with the same practiced deflection. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than they could imagine. He was terrified, not of failure. He'd failed before, learned from it, moved on. Not of rejection. Elena could say no, and the world would keep turning. He was terrified of the conversation itself, of sitting across from someone who'd once known him as just Marcus, awkward and ambitious and human, and revealing that he'd seen her, really seen her, not just the exhausted waitress, but the brilliant artist buried beneath years of sacrifice, the girl who'd called him a beautiful but soulless calculator, the woman who might look at him now and see nothing but pity disguised as opportunity. On Thursday morning, he made the decision. No more delays, no more rehearsing speeches in his head. He would go to the diner and he would speak, and whatever happened next would happen. He didn't take the Audi, didn't call for the company car with its tinted windows and leather interior. Instead, he walked to the parking garage beneath his building and stood before a car he hadn't driven in 3 years. His mother's old Honda Civic, mint green and embarrassingly ordinary among the Teslas and Mercedes that surrounded it. He'd kept it after she died, telling himself he'd sell it eventually, donate it, do something practical. But he never had. It was the last piece of her that still existed in the physical world, and he couldn't let it go. The engine turned over on the second try, coughing to life like an old friend waking from a long sleep. The interior still smelled like her. That particular combination of lavender hand lotion and the peppermints she kept in the center console. He sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, eyes closed. If she were here, what would she say? Probably something gentle and devastating. Something like, "It's not about the grand gesture, Marcus, it's about showing up." Really showing up, not as the billionaire, as yourself. He drove through the city in the late morning light, the streets less crowded than they'd been on that rain-soaked night. The corner spoon looked different in daylight, smaller, more worn. The paint on the exterior was peeling near the foundation. The neon sign that had seemed almost romantic in the darkness now just looked broken. But there was life inside. He could see movement through the windows, people eating, living, existing in a world where a $3 cup of coffee and a moment of human kindness mattered more than all his billions. He parked across the street and sat in the Honda, briefcase on the passenger seat. Inside that briefcase was the offer letter from the Synapse Foundation, printed on heavy stock paper that probably cost more per sheet than Elena made in an hour. There was a folder with printouts of her old artwork, pieces Thomas Webb had found in the digital archives of RISD's student exhibition website, and there was a letter Marcus had written himself, by hand, explaining everything. The guilt, the regret, the hope. He'd rewritten that letter 4 times. Each version had felt wrong, too formal, too emotional, too much like a business proposal, too much like a confession. In the end, he'd settled on something simple, something true, and he'd folded it carefully and placed it in an envelope with her name written on the front in his own handwriting. And he told himself he'd give it to her if the moment felt right, if she seemed ready to hear it. But first, he had to walk through that door. The bell chimed when he entered, the same cheerful sound that had announced his arrival 2 nights ago. The lunch crowd was in full swing. The elderly woman, Martha, sat in her usual booth with her tea. The truck drivers were at the counter, their voices a low rumble of conversation and occasional laughter. A young mother struggled with a fussy baby while trying to eat a sandwich that had long since gone cold. And there, moving between tables with practiced efficiency, was Elena. She looked tired. No, tired was too small a word. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond lack of sleep, the kind of weariness that settled into bones and made every movement an act of will. But she was smiling, asking the truck driver how his daughter was doing at college, offering to hold the baby so the young mother could eat in peace, making a joke with Martha about the weather that made the old woman laugh. She was extraordinary. How had he ever forgotten that? Marcus chose a different booth this time. Not in the back, but near the window where the light was better, where she'd have to pass him to reach the kitchen. He wanted her to see him clearly this time, no cap pulled low, no shadows to hide in. Just him. She finished taking an order from a couple in the corner booth, scribbled something on her pad, and turned toward the kitchen. Her path took her right past his table, and for a second, their eyes met. He saw the flicker of recognition, the slight widening of her eyes, the pause in her step. She knew him. After all these years, after all the changes, she knew him. Elena stopped walking, turned fully to face him, and for the first time in over a decade, she spoke his name. Marcus Thornton? Her voice was exactly as he remembered. Slightly husky, like she'd spent too many nights talking too late into the darkness. Warm, but with an edge of steel underneath. The voice of someone who'd learned not to let the world see all her soft places. "Hello, Elena." He stood, an automatic gesture of respect that felt both too formal and not formal enough. "It's been a long time." "Yeah," she said, and he could hear the decade in that single syllable, the weight of all the years between who they'd been and who they were now. She glanced around the diner, suddenly self-conscious. "What are you doing here? This doesn't exactly seem like your kind of place anymore." There was no bitterness in the observation, just fact. And she was right, this wasn't his world. He lived in penthouses and boardrooms and private jets. She lived here, in grease-stained aprons and minimum wage and tips that sometimes made the difference between making rent and being evicted. "I was hoping to talk to you," he said. "If you have a moment, it's important." Something flickered across her face. confusion, maybe a touch of fear. People like him didn't just show up in places like this to talk to people like her, not without a reason, not without wanting something. "I'm working," she said, glancing toward the kitchen where he could see the cook watching through the service window. "I can't really chat right now." "I know." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Simple, understated, just his name and a phone number. This isn't about the other night, the tip. This is about a job opportunity, a real one. "At my company." She stared at the card like it might bite her, didn't take it. "Marcus, I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm not looking for charity." "It's not charity," he said quietly, urgently. "I wouldn't insult you like that. This is business. Please, just 5 minutes, sit with me. Let me explain. She looked at him for a long moment. He could see her weighing options, calculating risks, trying to figure out his angle. Finally, she glanced at the clock on the wall. 5 minutes, she said. Then I have to get back to work. They sat across from each other in the booth, the cracked vinyl and chipped formica table between them like a barrier between worlds. She didn't relax into the seat, sat on the edge, spine straight, arms crossed over her chest. Defensive posture, protective. Everything about her body language said she was ready to run if this went wrong. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out the folder, slid it across the table toward her. She didn't touch it. "My company has a philanthropic arm," he began. "The Synapse Foundation. We support STEM education and technology startups in underserved communities. It's good work, but it lacks something essential. It has no soul, no human connection, no story that makes people care about what we're doing beyond the numbers." Elena's expression didn't change. She was listening, but she wasn't convinced. "A few days ago, someone in our research department was doing a deep dive looking for local creative talent. They found an old online portfolio, artwork from a RISD student application. It was remarkable, raw, but brilliant. The kind of vision we've been looking for." He opened the folder. Inside were printouts of her work, charcoal drawings of cityscapes that somehow captured not just the buildings, but the feeling of urban isolation. A series she'd called Metamorphosis, showing abstract representations of transformation and growth, digital paintings that blended technical precision with emotional depth. She looked at the images, and for the first time since she'd sat down, the mask cracked. Her hand moved almost involuntarily to touch one of the prints, her fingers hovering just above the surface like she was afraid it might disappear. "Where did you get these?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The internet never forgets," he said gently. "These were part of your RISD application portfolio. They're still archived on their student exhibition site from 10 years ago. That was a lifetime ago," she said, but she couldn't look away from the images. "I haven't made art like this in forever." "I know," Marcus said, "and I know why." Her head snapped up. Her eyes met his, and he saw the flash of something dangerous there. Anger, shame, fear. "You don't know anything about me. I know you gave up RISD to take care of your father," Marcus said quietly. "I know he got sick and you came home, and you've been working 2 jobs ever since to pay for his care and put your brother through college. I know you sacrificed everything you wanted for the people you love." The color drained from her face. "You investigated me?" Her voice shook. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "Someone who remembers how brilliant you were," he said. "Someone who saw you in this diner 2 nights ago and recognized what the world lost when circumstances forced you to stop creating. And yes, someone who had the resources to find out what happened. Not to invade your privacy, Elena. To understand, so I could help." "I don't need your help." She was standing now, gathering the printouts, shoving them back across the table toward him. "I don't need your pity or your charity or whatever this is. I need you to leave me alone." "Elena, please." He stood too, but didn't move closer. Didn't try to stop her, just held out one hand in a gesture of peace. "Just listen to what I'm offering. It's not charity, it's a real job. Lead concept artist for the Synapse Foundation, senior executive position, 6-figure salary, full benefits including comprehensive family medical coverage. It's yours if you want it." She froze, stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. "Why?" The single word came out sharp as a knife. "Why me?" There are thousands of artists in Seattle, hundreds with actual recent work and connections and degrees. Why would you offer this to a waitress who hasn't picked up a paintbrush in a decade? This was it, the moment of truth. He could stick to the corporate story, make it about talent and potential and filling a need, keep it professional and distant and safe. Or he could tell her the truth. Because I owe you, he said. She blinked, sat back down slowly, like her legs had stopped working. You owe me? For what? The Harrison Grant Scholarship. The name hung in the air between them like smoke. He could see her processing it, remembering. They'd been the two finalists for the most prestigious full-ride scholarship their high school had ever offered. A golden ticket to any university in the country. She'd been the favorite to win. Everyone knew it. She was brilliant across every discipline, a true Renaissance student. And then they'd announced his name instead. And he'd seen her face in that auditorium. The brief, devastating flash of disappointment before she'd schooled her features into a polite smile and clapped for him with everyone else. What about it? Her voice was careful now, controlled. I know you think I won it just because my math and science grades were slightly higher, Marcus said. That's what they announced. But there was more to it. An essay component, a financial need assessment. And Elena, my family was struggling. My dad's business was failing. My mom had just been diagnosed with cancer. The insurance was barely covering her treatment. We were 3 months from losing our house. He could see her face changing as he spoke, the anger softening into something else. Understanding, maybe. Or just the recognition of shared pain. I didn't write my essay about dreams or ambitions or changing the world, he continued. I wrote about survival, about a son desperate to save his family, about wanting to tell my mother that she could rest, that I had this, that she didn't have to work through chemotherapy anymore because I'd won and everything would be okay. Elena's eyes were shining now, not with anger, with tears. Your essay, he said quietly. I read it later when they published excerpts from the finalists. You wrote about bringing beauty to a broken world, about art as healing, about creativity as service to humanity. It was transcendent. Mine was desperate. The committee chose immediate need over future potential. They weren't wrong, but neither were you. He reached across the table, not touching her, but close enough that she could reach back if she wanted. I won, he said. I went to MIT, built a company, became successful by every measure that matters to the world. And every step of the way I carried guilt about you, wondered where you went, what you built, and then I found out. And the guilt became grief. Why grief? She whispered. Because you didn't fail, he said. You sacrificed. You were brilliant and generous and strong enough to carry your family when they couldn't carry themselves. And I got to build an empire while you built a cage of duty. Both of us doing what we had to do. But only one of us got called a success. A tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away impatiently, but more followed. This isn't charity, Elena. This is balance. This is me giving you the choice I got. I could choose my path because that scholarship freed me. You couldn't choose because circumstances trapped you. This job isn't a rescue. It's your turn to choose. Choose whether to come. Choose what to create. Choose who to be. I'm not saving you. I'm returning an option you should have always had. The diner continued around them. The clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation, the smell of coffee and bacon. But in their booth, time seemed to have stopped. Elena sat with tears streaming down her face, looking at the printouts of her old art spread across the table, and Marcus sat across from her, hardly breathing, waiting. Look, she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. I appreciate this, really, but I can't just walk away from my responsibilities. My father needs constant care. My mother's exhausted. I can't abandon them for some job that might not even work out. The job comes with benefits, Marcus said gently. Comprehensive family medical coverage. Unlimited. Your father would have access to any treatment, any specialist, any equipment he needs. We could hire full-time care if that would help. You wouldn't be abandoning them. You'd be securing their future. She looked up at him, hope and fear warring in those green eyes. Why are you doing this, really? Because someone told me once that I was a beautiful but soulless calculator, he said with a small smile. And she was right. I built everything and forgot what it was for. You could remind me. If you let me, I could help you build something too. The kitchen door swung open. Doug Patterson emerged, his eyes immediately finding Elena sitting in the booth with Marcus. His expression darkened. "Hartley," he barked across the diner, making half the customers look up. "You got tables waiting. Quit chatting and get back to work." Marcus saw Elena's body language change instantly, the brief vulnerability shuttering closed, the walls coming back up. She started to stand, automatic obedience to a man who had no right to speak to her that way. But then something shifted. She looked at the printouts on the table, at the offer letter Marcus had pulled from the folder, at her own hands, scarred and worn from years of work that demanded everything and gave nothing back. She stood up, but instead of grabbing her order pad and hurrying to the kitchen, she walked directly toward Patterson. "Doug," she said, her voice steady and clear, "I need to tell you something." Patterson's face was already red with irritation. "What?" "I quit." The diner went silent. Even the cook stopped moving, spatula frozen mid-flip. "What did you say?" "I said I quit. Effective immediately." She reached behind her back and untied her apron, pulled it over her head, folded it neatly and held it out to him. "You can't quit in the middle of a shift," Patterson sputtered. "That's unprofessional. That's abandonment." Elena just smiled. It was the first real smile Marcus had seen on her face, and it transformed her completely. "I just did," she said. "Good luck finding someone else willing to put up with your garbage." Patterson's face went from red to purple. He turned to Marcus, who had stood and moved to stand beside Elena. Not in front of her, not protecting her from the fight. Just there, present, a witness to her moment of liberation. "This is your fault," Patterson jabbed a finger in Marcus's direction. "You come in here, throw money around, think you can just steal my employees." "Actually," Marcus said, his voice dropping to that quiet, dangerous register that made board members nervous, "I think you'll find that Ms. Hartley made this choice entirely on her own. But while we're talking, there's something you should know. I own the building your diner leases." Patterson's face went from purple to white in an instant. "And I've just been made aware of some very concerning reports about your conduct here," Marcus continued. "Multiple complaints from former employees, all women, all describing a pattern of harassment, the kind of behavior that violates the morality clause in your lease agreement." "You can't," Patterson started, but his voice had lost all its bluster. "I can," Marcus said, "and I will. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. You'll be hearing from my lawyers." He turned to the other waitress, a woman in her 40s who'd been watching from behind the counter with wide eyes. "I don't believe we've met," he said, his voice warming considerably. "I'm Marcus Thornton. Ms. Hartley has accepted a position with my company, but I understand we're leaving you short-staffed. If you're interested in a change, we have openings in our corporate dining services. Better pay, better benefits, and I can personally guarantee a harassment-free workplace." The woman, her name tag read Janine, looked like she might cry. "Are you serious?" "Completely." He pulled out another business card. "Call this number. Ask for Margaret in HR. Tell her I sent you." Elena had moved to Martha's booth while this was happening. She leaned down and pressed something into the elderly woman's hand. Marcus couldn't see what, but he saw Martha's eyes go wide, saw her reach up to cup Elena's face with one weathered hand. "You're an angel," Martha said. "Always have been." "Just paying forward the kindness," Elena replied. "Take care of yourself, okay?" She walked back to Marcus, no longer the exhausted waitress in a too large polo shirt, but something else. Someone standing taller, someone who just reclaimed a piece of herself. "Ready to go?" Marcus asked quietly. "Where are we going?" "To meet the director of the foundation. If you're serious about this." She looked back at the diner, at Patterson, who stood frozen by the kitchen door, at Janine, who was clutching the business card like a lifeline, at Martha, tears running down her wrinkled cheeks, at the life she was leaving behind. Then she looked at Marcus and nodded. "I'm serious." They walked out together, the bell chiming behind them one last time. Outside, Elena stopped and took a deep breath of the cool Seattle air. She looked lighter somehow, like she'd just set down a weight she'd been carrying for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. "Is that your car?" She pointed at the mint green Honda Civic. "It was my mother's," Marcus said. "I kept it after she died." Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw understanding in her eyes. Recognition of shared loss and shared regret, and the ways we carry our dead with us. "She was proud of you," Elena said. "I'm sure of it." "I hope so," Marcus replied, "but I think she'd be prouder of this." They got into the car, and as Marcus pulled away from the curb, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Patterson was standing in the doorway of the diner, watching them go, his small kingdom crumbling around him. And Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt like maybe his mother would have approved of the man he was becoming. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, but the person who'd looked at suffering and decided to do something about it. The person who'd remembered that success meant nothing if you couldn't use it to lift others up. The drive to Synapse Dynamics headquarters took 20 minutes through a city Elena thought she knew, but was seeing with new eyes. She sat in the passenger seat of the old Honda, hands folded tightly in her lap to keep them from shaking. Through the window, she watched the landscape transform from worn streets to renovated districts, to the gleaming towers of the financial district. She'd been invisible in the city for so long. Just another tired face in the crowd. Another person working multiple jobs and still barely making it. And now this man beside her, this ghost from her past who'd become someone she didn't recognize, was offering her a chance to be seen again. Marcus drove carefully, occasionally glancing her way like he was afraid she might disappear. She appreciated that he didn't try to fill the silence. She needed space to think. She'd quit her job. After 2 years of enduring Patterson, after countless nights of aching feet and grease-stained uniforms, she'd walked away. And it felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. But underneath the fear was something else. Hope, fragile and tentative and dangerous, because hoping meant risking disappointment, and she'd had enough disappointment to last several lifetimes. She watched him as he drove. He'd changed so much from the awkward teenager she remembered. But there was something else there too. A sadness around his eyes. He'd won everything the world said mattered, and somehow it hadn't been enough. She understood that better than he probably knew. The Synapse building rose 50 stories into the Seattle sky, all glass and steel and impossible angles. Marcus pulled into the private garage, past the regular employee parking, into the executive section where his assigned spot sat empty between a Tesla and a Porsche. The Honda looked absurd there, and he loved it. "This is where you work?" Elena's voice was small. "This is where we work," he corrected gently, "if you want it." They took the elevator to the 48th floor. Elena was silent, her eyes tracking the numbers as they climbed. Marcus could practically hear her thoughts. "What am I doing? This is insane. I don't belong here." He wanted to tell her that she belonged anywhere she chose to be, that talent and heart mattered more than credentials. But he stayed quiet. She needed to decide this for herself. The elevator doors opened onto the Foundation's offices. Unlike the cold corporate aesthetic of the main Synapse floors, this space was different, warmer. There were plants everywhere, real ones that someone actually watered. Art on the walls, not expensive pieces chosen by a decorator, but work by local artists, each piece with a small plaque explaining who made it and why. Large windows flooded the space with natural light. "Mr. Thornton?" A receptionist looked up with a professional smile. "Dr. Chen is expecting you in her office." "Thank you, Sarah." They walked through the open floor plan. A few employees looked up, curious about the woman in a diner uniform walking next to their CEO, but no one stared. Marcus had built a culture that valued discretion. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was at the corner, windows on 2 walls offering views of both the sound and the mountains beyond. The door was open, and the woman inside looked up as they approached. Sarah Chen was 52, elegant in a way that had nothing to do with her clothes, and everything to do with how she carried herself. She'd lost her daughter 3 years ago in a car accident, and Marcus had watched her survive that grief by channeling it into work that mattered, into helping other people's children have the chances her daughter never got. "Mr. Thornton." She stood, then her eyes moved to Elena, and her expression shifted to something warmer. "You must be Elena Hartley." "I am," Elena said, and Marcus heard the uncertainty in her voice. Sarah came around her desk and extended her hand. Not to shake, but to hold. She took Elena's hand in both of hers. "I'm so glad you're here," Sarah said, and Marcus could hear she meant it. "Marcus told me about you, not just your art, your story." "Oh," Elena said, and Marcus saw her trying to pull the walls back up. "I lost my daughter 3 years ago," Sarah continued, still holding Elena's hand. Car accident. She was an artist too. Painter. Poet. She saw the world in colors and metaphors that the rest of us missed. "I'm so sorry," Elena whispered. "Thank you," Sarah said. "I tell you that because I understand what it means to lose something precious. To have your future rewritten in an instant. And I know what it takes to rebuild after everything falls apart. You lost yourself to save your family. That takes a kind of strength most people never have to find." She released Elena's hand and gestured to the chairs in front of her desk. "Please sit. Let's talk about what we're building here and how you might be part of it." "I should go," Marcus said. "Let you two talk." Sarah shook her head. "Stay. Elena should know this is a partnership between all of us." They sat, and Sarah opened a folder on her desk. "The Synapse Foundation funds STEM education and technology startups in underserved communities," she began. "We've invested over $200 million in the past 5 years. We've helped thousands of students, funded hundreds of businesses. By every metric, we're successful." She closed the folder. "But when people see our materials, they see numbers, charts, corporate branding that could belong to any foundation. There's no soul, no story, no connection to the real human lives we're changing. We need someone who can translate our mission into something people feel, not just understand. Someone who can make them care." "And you think that's me?" Elena's voice was skeptical. "I haven't created anything in years. I don't even know if I remember how. May I show you something?" Sarah turned her computer monitor so Elena could see. On the screen was one of the RISD pieces, the charcoal cityscape that showed buildings like human figures, hunched and reaching and alone together. "When I look at this," Sarah said, "I see isolation in the middle of community. I see people surrounded by others but still fundamentally alone. I see the problem our foundation is trying to solve. We don't just fund programs, we build connections. We say to people, you're not alone in this. That's what this drawing communicates without a single word." She pulled up another image, the Metamorphosis series. "And this shows transformation isn't a straight line. It's messy, it's painful. It requires breaking down before you can rebuild. That's what growth looks like, that's what learning looks like, that's what our students experience. And you captured it a decade ago." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "You remember how to do this, Elena. You're doing it right now. Every interaction I've seen you have, you make people feel seen. The elderly woman at the diner, the young mother. You create moments of grace in hard places. That's artistry. You haven't lost it. You just haven't had time to practice it in paint." Elena's hands were trembling. She folded them in her lap, trying to hide it. "I need to ask something," she said. "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be terrible at this." "2 reasons," Sarah said. "First, Marcus has never been wrong about potential. Not once in all the years I've known him. He sees things other people miss. If he says you're brilliant, you are. Second, and more important, I see myself in you. The person I was after my daughter died. Lost, exhausted, convinced the best parts of me were gone forever. And I was wrong. They weren't gone. They were just waiting for someone to remind me they existed." She opened a drawer and pulled out a slim document. "This is an offer letter, lead concept artist and brand strategist for the Synapse Foundation. Senior executive position. Starting salary is $140,000 per year. Full benefits including health insurance with no lifetime caps, dental, vision, and mental health coverage for you and your immediate family. 4 weeks paid vacation. Signing bonus of $20,000. Relocation assistance if you need it. And complete creative freedom to build our visual identity from the ground up." Elena stared at the document like it was written in a language she didn't speak. "This is real? This isn't some kind of mistake?" "It's real," Marcus said quietly. "And the only mistake would be if you didn't take it." "I need to think about it," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Of course," Sarah said. "Think as long as you need. But while you're thinking, would you like to see your office?" She led them down a hallway to a space at the end. The door was open. Inside was an office with windows that looked out over Puget Sound. The walls were blank white. The desk was empty. The room was waiting. "It's yours if you want it," Sarah said. "We can furnish it however you like. Art supplies, drafting tables, digital equipment, whatever you need. Or you can keep it minimal. It's your space. Your canvas." Elena walked to the window. stood there looking out at the water, at the mountains beyond, at a view that cost more money than she'd earned in the past 5 years combined. Marcus watched her shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath, watched her place one hand against the glass like she was testing to make sure it was real. "When can I start?" she said without turning around. "Tomorrow," Sarah said. "Today, whenever you're ready." Elena turned then, and there were tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "I'll need to tell my family first. Make arrangements for my father's care." "We can help with that," Marcus said. "I'll have my assistant coordinate with home care agencies, whatever he needs." "Okay," Elena said. "Okay, yes, I'll do it. I'll take the job." Sarah moved forward and pulled Elena into a hug. Not a professional handshake. A real embrace, the kind one survivor gives another. "Welcome home," Sarah whispered. And Elena, who'd held herself together through a decade of impossible choices, finally broke. She sobbed into Sarah's shoulder, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body, crying for the girl who'd left RISD with broken dreams, crying for the years of exhaustion and sacrifice and grinding survival, crying for her father's illness and her mother's weariness and her brother's guilt, crying for everything she'd lost and everything she was terrified to hope she might get back. Marcus stood by the window and looked away, giving her privacy in her moment of release, and he thought about his mother, about the last conversation they'd had, about her question. Are you building a wonderful life? Maybe not yet, but he was starting to, with Elena's help, with Sarah's wisdom, with the chance to use his resources for something more than acquisition and growth, and the endless accumulation of wealth that never made him feel any less empty. They were going to build something together, something that mattered, something his mother would have been proud of. And for the first time in 5 years, since that terrible day when he'd chosen a conference call over her bedside, Marcus felt like maybe he was becoming the kind of man she'd raised him to be. Not perfect, not without regret, but trying, really trying. And maybe that was enough. He drove Elena back to her apartment as the afternoon light turned golden over the city. The old Honda navigated streets that grew progressively more worn, buildings that got shorter and more weathered, until they pulled up in front of a 4-story walk-up with bars on the windows and graffiti on the exterior wall that someone had tried to paint over but gave up halfway through. "This is me," Elena said quietly, and he heard the shame in her voice. "Not much, but it's home." "Can I help you tell them?" Marcus asked. "Your family, about the job." She considered for a moment, then shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do myself. But thank you for everything, for seeing me, for remembering." "I never forgot," he said simply. She got out of the car, then leaned back in through the open door. "Marcus, why now? After all these years, why did you come looking for me now?" He thought about the rain, the empty penthouse, his mother's photo turned face down, the crushing weight of success that felt like failure. "Because I was drowning," he said, "and I needed to remember what it felt like to do something that mattered." She nodded slowly, understanding in those green eyes. "See you tomorrow," she said. "See you tomorrow." He watched her walk into the building, her shoulders a little straighter than they'd been when he first saw her in the diner. Then he drove away, back toward his tower of glass and steel. But somehow it felt less empty now. Elena climbed the 4 flights of stairs, each step familiar. Her heart was pounding. How was she going to tell them? She opened the door to the apartment and stepped into the small living room. Her father sat in his wheelchair by the window, the late afternoon light painting him in shades of gold. He looked up, surprise on his face. "Elena, you're home early. Did something happen?" Her mother emerged from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, concern on her face. "Honey, are you okay?" Ryan came out of the bedroom, laptop in hand. "Elle, what's wrong?" Looking at them, at the 3 people she'd sacrificed everything for, Elena felt her careful control shatter. She'd held herself together through everything today. But here, in this cramped apartment that smelled like home, she broke. "I quit the diner," she said, and burst into tears. Her mother was across the room in an instant, arms around her, and Elena collapsed into the embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, it's okay. We'll figure it out." "You don't understand," Elena sobbed. "I quit because I got a different job, a real job, using my art, and it pays more than I've made in the last 5 years combined." The room went silent except for her crying. "What?" Her father's voice was barely a whisper. She pulled back and tried to wipe her face, but the tears kept coming. Someone from high school found me. He owns a company and they need an artist, and he offered me a job, and it comes with insurance for all of us, and enough money to hire care for Dad. And I have my own office with windows, and they want me to create things, and I said yes, and I'm so scared. She told them everything about Marcus, about the investigation, about the offer and the benefits, and Dr. Chen, who understood grief, about the office waiting for her vision. And when she finished, they stared at her with shock and wonder. Her father spoke first, his voice thick with emotion. "You're taking it." "I already did. I start tomorrow." Margaret sat down heavily on the couch. "You're really going to be an artist again." "I'm going to try." David wheeled closer, took her hand in his trembling one. "Elena, look at me." She did. "For 10 years I've watched you disappear, the light going out of your eyes, all because of me. Because my body betrayed me and you wouldn't let me fall." "Dad, no." "Yes," he insisted. "I've carried guilt heavier than this disease, knowing you sacrificed your future for my present. And I couldn't do anything except watch you fade." He squeezed her hand. "But now someone has given you a chance to come back. And you're going to take it. You're going to remember who you are. And maybe, for the first time in 10 years, I'm going to stop feeling like I destroyed my daughter's life." "I chose this," Elena said fiercely. "I would choose it again." "Then let me give you something back," David said. "Let me be the father who tells his daughter to chase her dreams, even if it's 10 years late. Let me give you permission to be extraordinary." Elena knelt beside his wheelchair and put her head in his lap like she used to do when she was small, and he stroked her hair with shaking hands. And they both cried. Ryan cleared his throat from where he stood, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "So, this Marcus guy, is he the one who won the Harrison grant?" Elena nodded against her father's knee. "He said he's been carrying guilt about it for 10 years, that his family was struggling and he needed it, but you deserved it just as much, and this is his way of trying to balance the scales." "Seems like a decent guy," Ryan said. "For a billionaire." "He is," Elena said. "I think he's lonely. I think he built everything he thought would make him happy, and it didn't work." "Sounds familiar?" her mother said gently. Elena looked up at her. "What do you mean?" Margaret came to sit beside her daughter on the floor. "You built a fortress of duty and sacrifice thinking it would be enough, that if you just took care of us well enough, worked hard enough, gave up enough, you'd feel fulfilled. But it didn't work, did it? You were surviving, but you weren't living." "No," Elena admitted, "I wasn't." "So maybe you both needed this," Margaret said. "Maybe he needed to remember what it felt like to use his resources for something human. And you needed to remember what it felt like to create instead of just endure. Maybe this is one of those rare moments when helping someone else helps you, too." They sat together on the floor of that small apartment as the light faded. They talked about logistics and plans and all the practical details that would need to be worked out. But underneath the practical talk was something else. Something that had been missing for a very long time. Hope. The kind that came not from magical thinking, but from the simple truth that sometimes the world surprised you. Sometimes sacrifices got recognized. Sometimes doors opened that you'd thought were locked forever. That night, Elena stood in her small bedroom and opened the closet she hadn't really looked in for years. In the back was a box. She pulled it out with trembling hands. Inside were her art supplies from RISD, charcoals and pencils and brushes she'd packed away when she came home, telling herself it was temporary, just until things got better. She found a charcoal pencil. It felt foreign and familiar at the same time. She sat on her bed with a sketch pad on her knees and put charcoal to paper. At first, nothing came. Her hand felt clumsy. The lines were wrong. She erased and tried again and erased again. But then, slowly, something emerged. The outline of hands. 2 of them, reaching toward each other, not quite touching. The space between them filled with possibility. She worked until midnight, until her hand cramped and her eyes burned. And when she finally set the sketch pad aside and looked at what she'd created, she felt something she hadn't felt in a decade. Pride. It wasn't her best work, but it was hers. Created not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because she was, underneath all the years of survival and sacrifice, still an artist. And tomorrow, she would walk into that office with the windows overlooking the sound, and she would try to remember who she'd been before the world told her she had to choose between love and art. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, she was going to try. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Elena's first morning at the Synapse Foundation began with terror. She stood in front of her closet at 5 in the morning, staring at clothes that suddenly seemed inadequate for a life she wasn't sure she belonged in. The blazer she'd worn to the interview looked cheap in the harsh bathroom light. Her only pair of dress pants had a stain near the knee she'd never noticed before. Her shoes were scuffed from years of standing on diner floors. She wanted to call Marcus and tell him she'd made a mistake, that she couldn't do this, that she was a fraud who'd fooled everyone into thinking she was something she wasn't. Instead, she put on the blazer and the stained pants and the scuffed shoes, and she got on the bus because she didn't own a car, and she rode through the morning darkness toward the gleaming tower that was supposed to be her future. The foundation offices were empty when she arrived at 7:30, too early for most people, but Elena had spent a decade waking before dawn for shifts that started when the world was still dark. Her body didn't know how to sleep past 5 anymore. She found her office, the one with the windows overlooking the sound, and stood in the doorway. The walls were still blank. The desk was still empty. The room was waiting for her to fill it, and she had no idea where to start. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall and put her head in her hands. "What am I doing here?" "That's a good question," a voice said from the doorway, and Elena's head snapped up. Dr. Sarah Chen stood there with 2 cups of coffee, a small smile on her face. "I'm not judging," Sarah continued, coming into the office and sitting on the floor beside Elena. "I spent my first week here crying in the bathroom. Imposter syndrome is a beast. How did you know I'd be here this early?" "Because you're terrified," Sarah said gently, handing Elena one of the coffees. "And terrified people either avoid the thing that scares them or show up way too early to prove they're not afraid. You strike me as the second type." Elena took the coffee, grateful for something to hold. "I don't know if I can do this." "Good," Sarah said. "Good? If you thought this would be easy, I'd be worried. The fact that you're scared means you understand what's at stake, that you care about doing it right. What if I can't?" "Then we figure it out together," Sarah said. "This isn't a test you pass or fail, Elena. This is a journey. Some days you'll create something brilliant. Some days you'll stare at a blank canvas and nothing will come. Both are part of the process." They sat in silence for a moment, drinking coffee as the sun began to rise over the water, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Can I tell you something?" Sarah said. "Of course." "When my daughter died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except grief. I came back to work because I didn't know what else to do, and for months I was useless, just going through the motions. People were kind, but I could see them wondering when I'd be myself again." Sarah looked out at the sunrise. "Then one day I was reviewing an application for a scholarship. A kid from a rough neighborhood, terrible test scores, but his essay about wanting to be an engineer so he could design better prosthetics for his sister, who'd lost her leg to cancer. It broke something open in me. I called him personally, told him we'd fund his entire education. And when he cried on the phone and said no one had ever believed in him before, I felt something, not happiness, but purpose, connection. A reason to be alive that wasn't just survival." She turned to Elena. "That's what this work does. It reminds us we matter, that what we create can touch people we'll never meet, that even when we've lost everything, we can still give something." Elena's eyes were wet. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Sarah said with a small laugh. "I'm about to put you to work." They spent the next 3 hours in Elena's office, Sarah explaining the foundation's mission in detail. Not the corporate version from the website, but the real story. The kids they'd helped who became the first in their families to go to college. The single mothers who'd turned business ideas into thriving companies. The teachers in underfunded schools who'd gotten grants for equipment that changed everything. "But when people see our materials," Sarah said, pulling up the foundation's current website on her phone, "they see this." Elena looked at the screen. Clean corporate design, stock photos of diverse people looking inspirational, charts showing impact metrics. Professional but soulless. "It's not wrong," Sarah said. "But it's not alive. It doesn't make you feel anything. Because it could be any foundation," Elena said slowly. "Exactly. We need an identity. A visual language that's uniquely ours, that communicates who we are and what we believe without words. And you think I can create that?" "I know you can," Sarah said. "But not today. Today, you're going to explore. Walk around the building, talk to people, look at the city. Let your artist brain wake up. You've been in survival mode for a decade. Creativity doesn't come from forcing it. It comes from making space for it. Elena spent the rest of that first day wandering. She talked to Foundation employees, hearing their stories about why they did this work. She visited the main Synapse offices, watching engineers collaborate on projects she couldn't begin to understand. She sat in the cafeteria and sketched people on napkins, her hands slowly remembering the muscle memory of observation and translation. And late in the afternoon, as she stood by the windows in her office watching the light change over the water, Marcus appeared in her doorway. "How was day one?" he asked. "Overwhelming," she admitted. "But good, I think. Sarah said you were here at 7:30. Old habits," Elena said with a shrug. Marcus came to stand beside her at the window. "You don't have to prove anything, the job is yours. You're allowed to ease into it." "I'm not good at easing into things," she said. "I'm good at working until I'm too tired to think." "I know," Marcus said quietly. "I do the same thing. Work until the existential dread is too tired to keep up." She looked at him, surprised by the admission. "Does it work?" "Not really," he said with a rueful smile. "Just makes me good at spreadsheets and bad at being human." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Anything. Why did you really do this? And don't give me the Harrison Grant answer. That's true, but it's not the whole truth." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was drowning," he finally said. "In success that felt like failure. In money that bought everything except meaning. And I saw you in that diner, still fighting, still kind after everything you'd been through, and I thought maybe if I could help you find your way back, I could find mine too." He turned to look at her. "Selfish, right?" "No," Elena said. "Human." The days became weeks. Elena slowly filled her office with art supplies, sketchbooks, reference materials. She covered the walls with concepts, iterations, failures. Sarah was right. Some days she created brilliant work. Some days she stared at blank pages, and nothing came. But she kept showing up. The logo was the first challenge. She went through dozens of versions, abstract shapes that meant nothing, literal interpretations that were too obvious, designs that were beautiful but didn't capture the mission. Week 1, she created 17 different concepts. All failures. She'd sketch something, step back, and see immediately that it was wrong. Too corporate, too whimsical, too abstract, too literal. The trash can in her office overflowed with crumpled paper. Week 2, she tried a different approach. Instead of thinking about logos, she thought about the people the foundation served. She sketched James, the former homeless kid who was now helping others. She sketched Patricia, explaining how a food truck became a restaurant chain. She sketched the hands of a scholarship recipient signing their college acceptance letter. But she couldn't translate those stories into a single mark. A logo needed to be simple, memorable, scalable. These sketches were beautiful but useless. Week 3, she had a breakdown, stood in her office at 2 a.m, surrounded by failed attempts, and called Sarah. "I can't do this," Elena said when Sarah answered. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You should hire a real designer." "Where are you?" Sarah asked. Her voice calm. "My office. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't leave." Sarah arrived with coffee and pastries from an all-night bakery. She sat on the floor of Elena's office and looked at the walls covered in rejected concepts. "Tell me about this one," Sarah said, pointing at a sketch Elena had almost thrown away. "It's nothing, just me being frustrated." "Tell me anyway." Elena looked at the sketch. It was rough, barely more than a few lines. 2 abstract figures, one slightly elevated, reaching down, the other reaching up. The space between their hands filled with light. "I was thinking about my dad," Elena admitted. "About how when he got sick, he needed me to help him. But also how he was still there, still trying, still reaching back. It wasn't me saving him. It was us holding each other up." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "That's it," she finally said. "What's it?" "That's the logo. That's the foundation. We don't save people. We don't lift them up while they stay passive. We extend a hand, and they reach back. It's partnership, mutual effort, people helping each other become what they're capable of being." Elena looked at the sketch with fresh eyes, saw it not as a failure, but as the seed of something true. But it's so rough, she said. Then refine it, Sarah said. You've got the truth. Now make it beautiful. Late one night, 3 weeks in, she was alone in the office, surrounded by rejected sketches, when Marcus stopped by. He'd been working late too, something he did more often than he probably should, and had seen her office light on. Burning the midnight oil? He said from the doorway. Can't figure this out, she said, frustration clear in her voice. It needs to be about connection, about potential, about people reaching towards something better. But everything I draw feels wrong. Can I see? She gestured at the walls, covered in her iterations. Marcus studied them for a long time, not saying anything. Then he pointed to the rough sketch she and Sarah had discussed. This one, he said. That's not finished, she said. It doesn't need to be finished, Marcus said. It needs to be true. And this is true. He sat on the edge of her desk, studying the sketch. You know what I see? He said. I see my mother reaching for me when I was too busy to notice. I see every person who believed in me before I believed in myself. I see the foundation at its best. Not a charity, a partnership. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. He got it. He understood what she was trying to say. She spent the next week refining that concept, making it cleaner, more elegant, more powerful. She created digital versions, tested it at different sizes, tried it in different colors. Each iteration brought her closer to something she could feel proud of. And when she presented it to the foundation board, the room went silent. Then one of the board members, an older woman who'd founded 3 nonprofits, started clapping. Others joined. Sarah was crying. This is it, the woman said. This is exactly what we've been missing. Elena felt something she hadn't felt since leaving RISD. Pride mixed with purpose, the knowledge that her work mattered to people beyond herself. The success of the logo led to more projects. A complete brand refresh, marketing materials, a redesigned website. Elena worked long hours, but they were different from the diner hours. She was tired at the end of the day, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from creating instead of just surviving. Her relationship with Marcus evolved into something neither of them could quite define. Not romance, though there were moments when the air between them felt charged with possibility. Not quite friendship, though they talked about things friends talked about. Something else, a connection built on shared brokenness and mutual understanding. They had lunch together most days in the executive cafeteria. Conversations that ranged from shallow to profound. He told her about building synapse, about the thrill of solving impossible problems, about the day they closed their first major contract, and he'd called his mother from the parking lot, crying with relief and joy. She should have been there to see everything that came after, he said quietly one afternoon, staring at his untouched sandwich. The IPO, the expansion, the moment we knew we'd made it. She should have been there, but I was always too busy. Always one more meeting, one more deal, one more thing that seemed more important. You were building what she wanted for you, Elena said gently. No, Marcus said. I was building what I wanted. She just wanted me, and I chose everything else. The pain in his voice was raw, unfiltered. Elena reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. She knew you loved her. Did she? Marcus looked up, his eyes wet. Because I'm not sure I ever actually said it. Not in a way that mattered. Not in a way that proved it. Elena understood that guilt. Carried her own version of it. I do the same thing, she admitted, with my dad. I tell myself I sacrificed everything for him, that I gave up my dreams to save him. And it's true. But it's also true that part of me resented him for it. That there were days I looked at him in his wheelchair and felt angry that his illness cost me my future. That's natural, Marcus said. Maybe, Elena said. But it doesn't make it easier to live with. Knowing that the person you love, the person you're destroying yourself to save, is also the person you sometimes blame for everything you've lost. They sat in silence for a moment, both carrying their separate guilts, but feeling less alone for having shared them. On another day, Marcus asked her about RISD, what it had been like before everything changed. It was magic, Elena said, her eyes going distant with memory. I'd wake up every morning excited, not because I didn't have hard work ahead, but because the hard work was creating things, making something from nothing. And I was surrounded by people who understood that obsession. Sophie would paint until 3 in the morning, and I'd sketch until dawn, and we'd meet for breakfast and compare what we'd made, and it felt like we were part of something bigger than ourselves. Do you miss it? Marcus asked. Every day, Elena admitted. But I also don't know if I could go back. I'm not that person anymore. I've lived too much, carried too much. Even if I could create the way I did then, I don't know if I'd want to. That girl was naive. She thought talent and passion were enough. She didn't understand that the world could take everything from you and not care how brilliant you were. But you're creating again now, Marcus pointed out. I'm trying, Elena said, but it's different. Back then, I created from joy. Now I create from need, from the desperate hope that if I make something good enough, maybe I can prove I wasn't wrong to dream in the first place. You don't have to prove anything, Marcus said. I know, Elena said, but knowing it and believing it are different things. One evening, Marcus asked her to stay late, not for work, but because he wanted to show her something. He took her up to the executive floor, to his private office that overlooked the city. I spend so much time in here, he said, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, building and strategizing and making decisions that affect thousands of people. And sometimes I forget why I started, what any of this is for. He turned to look at her. When I see the work you're doing for the foundation, the way you translate our mission into something people can feel, it reminds me, this isn't about market share or quarterly earnings. It's about mattering, about using what we have to make things better for people who need it. You already knew that, Elena said. I knew it intellectually, Marcus said, but I'd forgotten how to feel it. You brought that back. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither was ready to say. Elena felt her heart racing, felt the pull toward him, the desire to close the distance between them. But she also felt the fear, the terror of needing someone again, of building her life around someone who might leave. Marcus seemed to sense her hesitation. He stepped back, giving her space. Thank you, he said simply, for being here, for doing this work, for reminding me what matters. Thank you for seeing me, Elena replied, for remembering I existed, for giving me this chance. They stood in the gathering darkness, the city lights beginning to twinkle on below them, and both felt the shift, the sense that something was building between them that couldn't be denied much longer. But they also both felt the fear, the knowledge that whatever this was, it had the power to save them or destroy them, and there was no way to know which until they took the leap. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. What is it? Marcus asked. An email, she said, staring at the screen, from someone I haven't heard from in 10 years. She looked up at him, surprise, and something like joy on her face. It's Sophie, my roommate from RISD. She saw the Foundation's new website. She recognized my work. The reunion happened on a Saturday afternoon at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market. Elena was nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred sugar into her latte. 10 years was a long time. People changed. Maybe Sophie would be disappointed in what Elena had become. Maybe the friendship had been a casualty of time and distance too great to overcome. Then a woman walked through the door, blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint stains on her jeans, and Elena knew her instantly. The way she moved, the tilt of her head, the searching look in her eyes. Sophie. Elle. They met in the middle of the coffee shop and hugged like they were drowning, and the other person was Air, both crying, both laughing, both trying to talk at once. I thought you hated me, Sophie said when they finally sat down at a corner table, her voice thick with emotion. You just disappeared. Stopped answering emails, stopped answering calls. I thought I'd done something terrible and you couldn't even tell me what. I couldn't explain, Elena said, wiping her eyes with a napkin. Couldn't bear the pity. My dad was sick and I had to come home and everything I thought my life would be just ended. And you were still there, still living the dream, and I couldn't face the comparison. I would have understood, Sophie said. I would have helped. I know, but I couldn't ask. Couldn't let myself be that person, the one who needed instead of the one who had it all figured out. They talked for 3 hours, catching up on a decade compressed into conversation over cooling coffee and shared memories. Sophie told Elena about finishing at RISD, about the brutal reality of trying to make it as an artist in New York, the gallery rejections that came monthly for the first 3 years, the day jobs that paid rent but killed creativity, the moment she almost gave up and moved back home to work in her father's insurance office. But then I got my first show, Sophie said, her eyes lighting up with the memory. Tiny gallery in Brooklyn, barely bigger than a closet. But people came, and one of them was a collector who bought 3 pieces. And that led to another show and another. And suddenly I was an artist. Not rich, not famous, but making a living doing what I loved. Elena felt pride and envy twist together in her chest. Pride for her friend's success. Envy for the path she'd lost. What about you? Sophie asked. Tell me about this Marcus guy, the billionaire who walked into a diner and changed your life. Elena told her everything. About seeing Marcus that first night. About not recognizing him until he came back. About the job offer that seemed too good to be true. About Dr. Chen and the foundation, and the work that was slowly bringing her back to herself. And this Marcus, Sophie said carefully, what's the situation there? What do you mean? Come on, Elle, billionaire finds his high school crush working as a waitress and creates a job specifically for her? That's a romance novel plot. It's not like that, Elena protested. He's not my high school crush. We barely knew each other. And this is about the Harrison Grant Scholarship. About guilt and making amends and giving me a chance I should have had. Sophie raised an eyebrow. And the fact that he's apparently handsome and successful and clearly cares about you has nothing to do with it. He's my boss, Elena said. And he's a billionaire. We're from completely different worlds. You were equals once, Sophie pointed out. In high school, before life happened to both of you. That was a lifetime ago. Sophie reached across the table and took Elena's hand. Can I tell you something as your best friend who's known you since you were 19? Of course. You're terrified of needing anyone. I get it. You've been the strong one, the caregiver, the person everyone else leans on. But Elle, you're allowed to lean back. You're allowed to let someone take care of you for once. I don't know how, Elena admitted, her voice small. I don't know how to be the one who needs. Then learn, Sophie said gently. Because life is too short to protect yourself from connection. Trust me. I've spent the last 10 years building walls around my heart because I was too scared of getting hurt. And you know what? The walls work. I don't get hurt, but I also don't get loved. I'm lonely in a city of 8 million people because I'm too afraid to let anyone close. Is there someone? Elena asked. There was, Sophie said, a photographer I met at a gallery opening 2 years ago. Smart, funny, kind. We dated for 6 months. It was good, really good. And then he said he loved me and I panicked and ended it. Oh, Sophie. I regret it every day, Sophie said. Not because he was perfect or because we were soulmates, but because I let fear make my decision. And now I'm alone, and he's engaged to someone else, and I have to live with knowing I chose safety over possibility. She squeezed Elena's hand. Don't be me, Elle. If there's something there with Marcus, explore it. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved, and you deserve to let yourself need someone without thinking it makes you weak. The conversation shifted after that, becoming lighter. They talked about art and technique and the galleries Sophie thought would be interested in Elena's work. They made plans for Elena to visit New York, to see Sophie's studio, to meet the artistic community Sophie had built. When they finally said goodbye on the sidewalk outside the coffee shop, promising to stay in touch this time for real, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. The warmth of female friendship, the comfort of being known by someone who remembered who you used to be and celebrated who you were becoming. Walking back to her apartment, Elena thought about what Sophie had said, about walls and fear and choosing possibility. Was that what she was doing with Marcus? Building walls to protect herself from the terrifying possibility that this could be real? They made plans to stay in touch, real plans this time, with actual dates. Sophie was coming to Seattle in a few months for an art show and promised to visit the foundation offices. Elena promised to come to New York for a weekend when she had vacation time saved up. Walking back to her apartment after the coffee shop, Elena felt lighter than she had in years. She'd gotten back a piece of her past, a reminder of who she'd been before everything changed. And somehow that made the present feel more solid, more real. But she wasn't the only one whose past was catching up. In a corner office across town, in a building almost as tall as Marcus's, a woman named Victoria Cross sat staring at a computer screen. On it was the Synapse Foundation's new website, featuring Elena's redesigned logo and the story of the foundation's mission. Victoria was 45 years old, elegant in the way that came from money and careful maintenance. CEO of Orion Systems, a tech company that had been trying to compete with Synapse for the better part of a decade and losing ground every quarter. She was brilliant, ruthless, and carrying a wound that had never quite healed. 10 years ago, she and Marcus Thornton had been equals, rising stars in the tech world, both young and ambitious and brilliant. They'd met at an industry conference, been seated next to each other at a dinner for emerging innovators, and spent 4 hours talking about everything from compression algorithms to philosophy to their shared dream of changing the world. They'd started dating a week later. For 8 months, it had been intense and consuming. They'd worked side by side, pushing each other to think bigger, dream larger. Victoria had believed they were building something together. Not just companies, but a partnership that would reshape the industry. Then one night, over dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first date, she'd proposed an idea she'd been thinking about for months. "What if we merged our companies?" she'd said. "Equal partners. We'd be unstoppable together." Marcus had been quiet for a long time. Too long. "I can't do that," he'd finally said. "Why not?" "Because I need to do this alone. Build Synapse without compromise, without having to negotiate every decision." You understand, right? She'd understood. She'd understood that she wasn't enough, that her love, her partnership, her willingness to share everything meant nothing compared to his need for control. She'd understood that Marcus Thornton chose success over connection every single time. The breakup had been public and humiliating. Industry gossip ran wild. Victoria Cross couldn't keep Marcus Thornton. She wasn't good enough for the boy wonder. She drove him away with her neediness, her ambition, her desire for something he couldn't give. She'd spent the years since proving them all wrong, building Orion Systems into a formidable competitor, working harder, longer, smarter than anyone else, becoming just as ruthless, just as ambitious, just as willing to sacrifice everything for the climb. If Marcus wouldn't have her as a partner, she'd beat him as a rival. But she hadn't beaten him. Every quarter, Synapse pulled further ahead. Every year, the gap widened. And every time she saw Marcus's name in the news, saw his company celebrated, saw his success multiply, something dark twisted in her chest. Now, looking at this woman's face on his foundation's website, Victoria felt something darker than competitive drive, because she recognized what she saw in the way the website talked about Elena, the way her bio emphasized her journey, her sacrifice, her vision, the way Marcus had clearly invested not just money, but belief in this person. Marcus believed in this woman, trusted her, had given her not just a job, but a platform, had taken someone from nothing and elevated her to leadership, had created a position specifically for her talents, had given her resources and support and faith. He'd never done that with Victoria. Never trusted her enough to be partners. Never made her feel like anything more than a transaction. A relationship that served his needs until it didn't, then was discarded. And now he was doing for this waitress everything Victoria had asked for. The partnership, the trust, the belief in shared vision. He just hadn't wanted to do it with Victoria. She clicked through more pages of the website, reading about Elena's work, seeing the logo that was genuinely brilliant, the kind of visual identity that conveyed emotion without words. This woman had talent, real talent, and Marcus had seen it, had given her space to develop it, had supported her growth. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. Not quite heartbreak, because the heart had broken years ago, but recognition of a loss she'd never fully acknowledged. She'd wanted this, not the job, but the belief, the partnership, the sense that someone saw her potential and would help her reach it. Instead, she'd gotten rejection, and she'd turned that rejection into rage, and rage into ambition, and ambition into a decade of trying to prove she didn't need him, that she was better off alone, that his choice to walk away had been the best thing that ever happened to her. But sitting in her office, looking at evidence of everything Marcus could have been to someone if he'd chosen differently, Victoria had to face a truth she'd been avoiding for 10 years. She was lonely, successful but lonely, powerful but empty. She'd built an empire, but she'd built it alone, and the victory felt hollow. And Marcus, The man who'd said he needed to do things alone had apparently been lying. He just hadn't wanted to do them with her. Victoria picked up her phone and called her head of corporate intelligence. "I need everything you can find on Elena Hartley," she said. "Background, family, financials, weaknesses, everything." "Timeline?" "Yesterday," Victoria said and hung up. She looked at Elena's photo one more time, and something cold settled in her chest. Marcus Thornton had rejected partnership with her because he needed to do things alone. But apparently, that was a lie. He just needed to do things without Victoria. She would make him regret that. Back at the foundation, Elena was unaware of the attention her success had drawn. She was too busy trying to keep up with the momentum her logo had created. Sarah wanted a complete visual campaign, marketing materials, videos, a brand book that other organizations could reference. It was overwhelming and exhilarating. Elena worked longer hours than she probably should have, driven by equal parts passion and fear that if she slowed down, she'd discover this was all a dream. Marcus noticed. One evening, he found her in her office at 8 o'clock, still working, surrounded by coffee cups and sketches. "Elena," he said from the doorway, "go home. I'm almost done with this." "That's what you said 2 hours ago," he said, coming into the office. "Sarah told me you were here." "I'm fine." "No, you're not," he said, but not unkindly. "You're falling into the same trap I did, working until you're too tired to feel anything except productive." "It's different," Elena protested. "I'm creating things that matter." "I know," Marcus said, sitting on the edge of her desk. "And they're brilliant, but you're running yourself into the ground. When's the last time you took a day off?" Elena opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She couldn't remember. "That's what I thought," Marcus said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to save your work. We're going to leave this building. And we're going to do something that has nothing to do with foundations or logos or proving anything to anyone." "Like what?" "I have no idea," Marcus admitted, "but we'll figure it out." 20 minutes later, they were walking through Pike Place Market. The evening crowds had thinned, but the market was still alive with vendors packing up their stalls, street musicians playing for tips, the smell of flowers and fish and humanity all mixed together. "I haven't been here in years," Elena said, looking around with wonder. "I used to come here with my dad when I was a kid. Before he got sick, he'd buy flowers for my mom and we'd watch the fish throwing guys and get mini donuts." "What were you like as a kid?" Marcus asked. "Happy," Elena said simply. "I thought the world was full of infinite possibility, that I could be anything, do anything." "You still can." "I don't know about that," she said. "But I'm grateful for what I have, for what you've given me." "I didn't give you anything," Marcus said. "Just opened a door. You're the one walking through it." They stopped at a stall selling fresh flowers. Elena reached out to touch a sunflower, her fingers gentle on the petals. "My mom's favorite," she said softly. "Buy them for her," Marcus said. "I don't need to. I send her money now. She can buy her own flowers." "It's not the same though, is it? Buying them yourself and bringing them home." Elena looked at him, surprised by the insight. "No," she admitted, "it's not." Marcus pulled out his wallet, but Elena stopped him. "I've got this one," she said, and bought a bouquet of sunflowers with her own money. Money she'd earned creating instead of serving. It felt different, better. They walked through the market, talking about nothing important. Favorite foods and worst movies, and the kind of small talk that felt profound when shared with someone who really listened. And Elena realized this was the first time in a decade she'd done something purely for pleasure. Not for work or obligation or survival, just because it felt good to be alive. As the sun set over the Sound, painting the sky in impossible colors, Marcus and Elena sat on a bench overlooking the water. The sunflowers rested between them, bright yellow against the darkening sky. "Thank you," Elena said. "For what?" "For reminding me I'm allowed to have this. To be happy, to exist as something other than a caregiver or an employee or a survivor." "You are all those things," Marcus said. "But you're also allowed to just be Elena, whatever that means." "I'm still figuring that out," she admitted. "Me too," Marcus said. The just being Marcus part. Turns out that's harder than building a billion-dollar company. They sat in comfortable silence as the city lights began to twinkle on around them. And if someone had been watching, they might have thought they saw two people falling in love. But it was more complicated than that. It was two broken people finding safety in each other's brokenness. two lonely people discovering that maybe they didn't have to be lonely anymore. It was the beginning of something neither of them could name yet, but they both felt it. The shift, the possibility, the terrifying, exhilarating sense that their lives were changing in ways that couldn't be undone. In her office across town, Victoria Cross received the report on Elena Hartley, read about the father's illness, the brother's education, the decade of sacrifice. Found the weakness she was looking for. Elena Hartley had rebuilt her life on gratitude to Marcus Thornton, which meant her loyalty was conditional, dependent, fragile, and Victoria knew exactly how to exploit that. She made a call to someone who specialized in the kind of work that couldn't be traced back to her, gave instructions that were clear and cold. I need you to create something for me, a fiction so perfect she'll believe it with her whole heart, and when it breaks her, it will break him too. The person on the other end of the line confirmed the details and hung up. Victoria looked out at the Seattle skyline, at the Synapse building gleaming in the distance, and smiled. Marcus Thornton thought he could have everything. The empire, the foundation, the perfect redemption story. But Victoria was about to teach him that some debts couldn't be paid, some wounds couldn't be healed, and some people never forgot being left behind. The storm was coming. Elena and Marcus could feel it in the air, that electric tension that preceded thunder. But they couldn't see it yet, couldn't prepare for it. They were too busy discovering each other, too caught up in the fragile hope that maybe, finally, they'd both found something worth holding on to. They had no idea how much they were about to lose, or how dark the valley would be before they found their way back to the light. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after Elena had started at the foundation. She was sitting in her office, reviewing mock-ups for the annual report, when her phone chimed with a notification. Personal email. She almost ignored it, assumed it was spam, but something made her look. Subject: Exhibition Opportunity, your RISD portfolio. From Sebastian Merchant, Senior Curator, Vanguard Contemporary Art Gallery. Her heart stopped. Dear Ms. Hartley, the email began. Through an anonymous art scout who monitors emerging talent, we were shown your RISD application portfolio from over a decade ago. I must tell you, I was utterly captivated. The emotional depth and technical mastery evident in those early pieces is precisely what Vanguard Contemporary specializes in showcasing. Elena read it again, then a third time. Her hands were shaking. Vanguard Contemporary is a new gallery in Chelsea, New York, dedicated to rediscovering overlooked contemporary voices, artists who, for whatever reason, stepped away from their path, but whose talent deserves recognition. Your story, leaving RSD to care for your family, and now returning to art through your extraordinary work at the Synapse Foundation, is exactly the narrative our patrons find most compelling. The email went on to detail the gallery, its mission, its connections. It included links to a professional website, photos of a beautiful white-walled space with soaring ceilings and natural light. It mentioned other artists they'd discovered, names Elena didn't recognize but could verify through quick searches. We would like to offer you a solo exhibition in our main gallery space, the email concluded. This is not an emerging artist slot. This is a headline show with full promotional support. If you're interested, I would love to discuss the details. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yours in art, Sebastian Merchant.
Elena sat staring at her phone, barely breathing. A solo show. In New York. Her oldest, most deeply buried dream, handed to her like a gift. It seemed too good to be true. She forwarded the email to Sarah, then to Sophie, with a simple message. Is this real? Can you check? Sarah called within 5 minutes. Elena, this is incredible. I just looked up the gallery. They're new, only been open about 6 months, but everything looks legitimate. Professional website, good press coverage, solid list of represented artists. Sophie called an hour later. Elle, I don't know this gallery personally, but I asked around. A couple people have heard of it. New space, good reputation, serious collectors. This could be real. But it feels too perfect, Elena said, like someone's playing a joke. Or maybe the universe is finally giving you what you deserve, Sophie said. Reply to him. See what he says. What do you have to lose? Elena took a breath and typed a response. Cautious, but interested. Professional. She mentioned her current work at the foundation, asked for more details about the exhibition timeline and terms. Sebastian's response came within an hour. Enthusiastic, detailed, knowledgeable. He referenced specific pieces from her RISD portfolio, spoke about them with an insight that suggested he really understood art. He explained that Vanguard focused on artists with unconventional paths, that her story of sacrifice and return was exactly what made art meaningful. Over the next 2 weeks, they exchanged several emails. Each one deepened Elena's trust. Sebastian asked thoughtful questions about her creative process, the evolution of her style, the way life experience had changed her artistic voice. He shared details about the gallery space, sent photos of the white walls and natural lighting, described the neighborhood and the foot traffic and the collectors who frequented the area. He mentioned a collector who'd already expressed interest based on the few images he'd seen. A woman who'd built a career in finance but collected art that spoke to female experiences of sacrifice and resilience. Your work, Sebastian wrote, speaks directly to that. She's already committed to attending the opening. Elena read each email multiple times, saved them, reread them late at night when she couldn't sleep, letting herself believe this was real, that her decade of sacrifice hadn't destroyed her chance at the life she dreamed of, that she could have both the foundation work that made her feel purposeful and the artistic recognition that made her feel seen. She told Marcus about the correspondence during one of their lunches, showed him the photos of the gallery space, the enthusiastic emails from Sebastian. "This is really happening," she said, her voice full of wonder. "I'm going to have a show in New York." Marcus smiled, but she caught something in his eyes, a flicker of concern. "Have you signed a contract yet?" he asked. "Not yet. Sebastian said he's having their legal team prepare something. Should have it to me next week." "Good," Marcus said. "Have our legal department look at it before you sign anything." "You don't trust him," Elena said, her smile fading. "I don't know him," Marcus corrected. "And neither do you, really. Email can be deceiving. I just want to make sure everything is legitimate before you commit." Elena felt a flash of defensiveness. After everything Marcus had done for her, after he'd given her this incredible opportunity at the foundation, part of her needed this gallery show to be separate, to be something she'd earned on her own merit, not another gift from the man who'd already given her so much. "I can handle this," she said, more sharply than she intended. "This is my dream, my chance. I don't need you to protect me from it." Marcus looked hurt, but he nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm being overprotective. It's just..." He paused, searching for words. "You matter to me, Elena. The idea of anyone taking advantage of you makes me want to burn the world down." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Elena felt her defensiveness melt. "I know," she said softly, "and I appreciate it, but I need to do this myself, to prove I can still navigate the art world without someone holding my hand." "I understand," Marcus said. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "If anything feels wrong, you'll tell me, even if you think I'm being paranoid." "I promise," Elena said. In their fifth email exchange, Sebastian wrote something that made Elena's eyes well up. "May I share something personal? I also left art school. Family emergency, much like yours. Spent years thinking I'd lost my chance. But coming back brought depth my early work lacked. Your hiatus wasn't a loss, Elena. It was gestation. The art you create now has wisdom your younger self couldn't have achieved." Elena showed that email to Marcus during lunch, her voice thick with emotion as she read it aloud. "He gets it," she said. "He understands what it's like to lose everything and have to build yourself back up." Marcus read the email, his expression thoughtful. Something about it bothered him, though he couldn't articulate why. The words were perfect, too perfect, like they'd been carefully crafted to hit every emotional note Elena needed to hear. But he said nothing, because Elena's face was radiant with hope, and he couldn't bring himself to dim that light, even if his instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Marcus read the email, his expression thoughtful. "It sounds genuine," he said. "Have you talked to him on the phone?" "Not yet. He suggested a call next week to discuss contract terms." "Good," Marcus said. "And Elena, I'm happy for you. This is what you deserve. Your work being seen, your talent being recognized beyond just the foundation." She felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. His faith in her had never wavered, and it meant everything. The phone call happened on a Wednesday evening. Elena sat in her apartment, nervous as she dialed the number Sebastian had provided. A cultured voice answered, warm and professional. "Elena, it's wonderful to finally speak with you." They talked for an hour. Sebastian described his vision for her show, how he saw her Metamorphosis series as the centerpiece, how they could include both her RISD work and recent foundation pieces to show the arc of her journey. He mentioned a timeline, early spring, about 4 months away, plenty of time to prepare. "Do you have enough work?" he asked. "We'd need at least 20 to 25 pieces for a show of this caliber." "I have the RISD portfolio," Elena said, "and I've been sketching personally, outside my foundation work. I think I could create enough by spring." "Wonderful," Sebastian said. "I'll have our design team prepare the exhibition catalog. They'll need high-resolution images of everything. Can you handle that?" "Of course," Elena said. "Perfect, I'll send details next week." When the call ended, Elena sat in her apartment, overwhelmed. This was happening, really happening. She called Sophie, who screamed with excitement. She texted Marcus, who responded immediately with congratulations. She told her parents, and her father cried with joy. For the first time in a decade, Elena let herself believe that maybe she could have it all. The stable job that supported her family, and the artist life she'd thought was lost forever. She had no idea she was being played. In her office at Orion Systems, Victoria Cross listened to the recording of the phone call. The voice modulator had worked perfectly. Elena had bought every word. Now came the crucial part. Victoria pulled up the specifications for the Trojan program her team had developed. Sophisticated, nearly undetectable, designed to do exactly what she needed. Not steal data, but plant it. Create a false history of betrayal so convincing that even Marcus's forensics team would believe it at first. She composed the next email from Sebastian Merchant, the one that would spring the trap. 2 weeks later, the email arrived. "Elena, I have exciting news. We've confirmed major press coverage for your show. New York Times Art Forum, several important critics. To prepare the catalog and press materials, we need your complete portfolio in high resolution. Everything. RISD work, foundation designs, recent personal pieces. We want to show the full journey." She included detailed instructions, a link to what appeared to be a secure gallery server. Professional looking, encrypted, exactly what a legitimate gallery would use. "Please create a folder labeled Elena_Hartley_portfolio and upload all your work files. The system is encrypted end-to-end for your protection. Once you're done, let me know and our design team will begin work on the catalog." Elena read the email in her office late on a Thursday afternoon. Most people had already left for the day. She was alone on the foundation floor, working late as she often did, driven by equal parts passion and lingering insecurity that if she slowed down, everything would disappear. She clicked the link. A professional portal opened, asking her to create an account. She did, using her personal email and a password. The upload interface appeared, clean and intuitive. Elena spent the next hour gathering files. She pulled up her archived RISD work, carefully preserved on an external drive she'd brought from home years ago, never quite able to throw away these ghosts of who she'd been. She looked at the file names and felt transported. Figure Study 3, Still Life with Grandmother's Hands, Metamorphosis Series Part 7, each one a memory of late nights in the RISD studio, of Sophie working beside her, of professors who believed she was destined for greatness. She exported high-resolution versions of her foundation designs, the logo that had taken her weeks to perfect, the campaign materials that had won praise from the board, the visual identity she'd built that made people feel something when they looked at it. She uploaded photos of recent sketches and paintings, work she'd created in her apartment late at night, rediscovering the joy of making art just for herself. A charcoal drawing of her father's hands, aged and trembling but still capable of love. A watercolor of the view from her office window at dawn. An abstract piece she'd done after one of her lunches with Marcus. All tension and possibility, and the terror of wanting something you're afraid to name. Each file represented a piece of her soul, the RISD work, bright with the optimism of youth, the foundation designs, professional and polished in proof she could still do this. The recent personal work, raw and honest and vulnerable in ways that scared her. She organized everything into the folder Sebastian had requested, her hands trembling slightly. This was it. The moment her work would be seen by gallery owners and collectors and critics. The moment she stopped being a waitress who got lucky and became an artist who deserved recognition. She took a deep breath and clicked upload. The progress bar appeared, moving slowly. 43 files, several gigabytes of data. It would take a while. Elena got up to make coffee, her nervous energy needing an outlet. She paced around her office, checking her phone, looking out the window at the city lights below. The Synapse building at night was beautiful, all glass and light and the hum of servers keeping the world running. She thought about Marcus, probably still in his own office a few floors up, working late as he always did. She thought about texting him, telling him she'd uploaded the portfolio, but decided against it. He'd been skeptical about the gallery, and she didn't want his caution to dim her excitement. The upload bar crawled toward completion, 90%, 95, 100. Upload complete, the screen read. Thank you for your submission. Your files are being processed and will be reviewed by our design team within 48 hours. Elena logged out, sent Sebastian a quick confirmation email. All files uploaded successfully. So excited to see the catalog mock-ups. She shut down her computer, gathered her things, and headed home. Her heart was light, her steps quick. She rode the elevator down humming softly, something she hadn't done in years. The night security guard smiled at her as she passed.
Good night, Ms. Hartley.
Good night, Marcus. She'd started using his first name weeks ago, part of the slow humanization that happened when you saw someone every day. Have a good evening. You too, ma'am. She walked out into the Seattle night, the air crisp and clean after an earlier rain. Took the bus home, staring out the window at the passing city, imagining her opening night in New York. The white walls, the professional lighting, people studying her work, discussing it, seeing her. She had no idea that at that very moment, while she rode the bus home dreaming of galleries and recognition, a sophisticated program was burrowing into her computer's operating system, installing itself in hidden directories, accessing her email, creating false messages, building a history of betrayal that would destroy everything she'd built. She had no idea that her dream had just become the weapon that would be used to kill it. What she didn't see, what she couldn't have known to look for, was the other program loading, hidden in the upload portal's code, invisible to anyone without deep technical knowledge and the paranoia to look for it. A Trojan designed not to steal, but to plant, to create a false reality so convincing that even experts would believe it at first glance. As Elena's art uploaded, the Trojan downloaded itself onto her computer, installed itself in system files where she'd never think to look, began mapping her access permissions, her credentials, her security clearances, waited for her to log out, then activated. It accessed her Synapse email account, created messages she'd never sent, backdated over the past 3 months, timestamped to appear like they'd been sent during her normal work hours. Emails that appeared to be from Elena to Victoria Cross at Orion Systems. Subject lines designed to look damning. Foundation donor list, confidential. Synapse, strategic plans, Q1. Board meeting notes, private. Research and development roadmap, eyes only. It planted documents in her cloud storage. Files that looked like she'd been systematically copying sensitive foundation information. Financial projections. Donor databases, strategic initiatives, everything a competitor would pay dearly to access. It created correspondence that suggested payment arrangements, offshore account numbers, wire transfer confirmations. A paper trail so meticulous that any forensic accountant would conclude Elena Hartley had been selling secrets for months, earning far more from espionage than from her legitimate salary. The program worked through the night, building a history of betrayal with digital precision. Every file was timestamped correctly. Every email thread had realistic gaps in responses. Every piece of evidence was designed to withstand initial scrutiny. By the time the sun rose, Elena Hartley's digital footprint told a story of calculated betrayal, of a woman who'd been granted a dream opportunity and had repaid her benefactor by stealing everything she could access and selling it to his bitterest rival. It was a masterpiece of deception. And it was completely, utterly false. The breach was detected at 3:17 a.m. by an automated security system Marcus himself had designed years ago. Silent alarms triggered across the Synapse network. The head of security, James Reynolds, was pulled from sleep by an emergency call. "We have a breach," the night security officer said. "Major 1, internal origin." Reynolds was in his car within 10 minutes, racing through empty Seattle streets toward the Synapse building. He called Marcus en route. Marcus, we have a situation. You need to get to the office now. What kind of situation? The kind that ends careers, Reynolds said grimly. Marcus arrived at 3:50 a.m., his mind racing through possibilities. Ransomware attack? Data breach from an external source? Corporate espionage? He found Reynolds in the security center. A windowless room on the 22nd floor filled with monitors and servers, and the soft blue glow of digital surveillance. Show me, Marcus said. Reynolds pulled up the evidence on the main screen. A timeline showing unauthorized access to Foundation files, email logs revealing sensitive information sent to external addresses, financial records suggesting payments to an offshore account, and at the center of it all, one name, Elena Hartley. Marcus stared at the screen, read the name again, read it a third time, felt the world tilt on its axis. No, he said, that's impossible. The data doesn't lie, Reynolds said quietly. I'm sorry, Marcus, but it's all here. She's been accessing confidential files for months, sending information to someone at Orion Systems. There's even evidence of payment transfers. Marcus's mind was a battlefield. Logic screamed that the evidence was overwhelming. Years of trusting data, of building a company on the foundation of provable facts, of making decisions based on metrics and analysis, told him this was real. The timestamps were correct, the email headers authentic, the financial trail meticulously documented. Elena had betrayed him, but his heart, the part of him that had come back to life watching her rediscover herself, that had seen her cry with gratitude and work until exhaustion, and create art that moved people to tears, that part knew with absolute certainty that this was wrong. He remembered the night in the diner, watching her give Martha free pie even though she could barely afford food for herself. He remembered her breaking down in her father's lap, overwhelmed by the weight of a decade of sacrifice. He remembered her hands shaking the first day at the office, terrified she'd fail, desperate to prove she deserved this chance. That woman didn't betray people. That woman didn't sell secrets for money. That woman had turned down his initial $200 tip because it felt like too much, like she hadn't earned it. She wouldn't do this, he said, his voice hard and certain. Marcus, Reynolds began, his tone gentle but firm. The evidence is conclusive. I understand she's your friend, but you can't let personal feelings cloud your judgment. My judgment isn't clouded, Marcus said. My judgment is the only thing seeing clearly right now. Someone planted this, made it look like her, and I know exactly who. Who would do that? Reynolds asked. Victoria Cross, Marcus said immediately. The name tasted like poison. Reynolds was quiet for a moment. He'd worked for Marcus long enough to know about Victoria. The relationship, the breakup, the years of bitter competition. That's a serious accusation, Reynolds said carefully. I know, Marcus said, and I need 24 hours to prove it. No authorities, no board notification, just me and Elena and the truth. Marcus, protocol requires immediate escalation. This is corporate espionage. The board has to be notified. We're legally obligated. And I'm invoking CEO privilege, Marcus said, his voice dropping to that dangerous calm that made board members nervous. 24 hours. Then you can escalate to whoever you want. Alert the FBI, call the board, do whatever protocol demands. But give me 1 day to prove she's innocent. And if you can't prove it? Reynolds asked quietly. Then I'll fire her myself, Marcus said, the words like broken glass in his throat. I'll hand her over to the authorities and watch her life get destroyed. But Reynolds, I need to try. I need to know I did everything I could. Reynolds studied his boss's face, saw something there he'd never seen before. Not just determination, but desperation. The look of a man about to lose something that mattered more than the company, more than his reputation, more than anything he'd built. 24 hours, Reynolds agreed reluctantly. But Marcus, if you're wrong about this, if she really did betray you. I'm not wrong, Marcus said with absolute certainty. I've been wrong about a lot of things in my life. I was wrong to let Victoria walk away thinking I didn't value her. I was wrong to miss my mother's death for a conference call. I was wrong about what success means and what makes life worth living. But I'm not wrong about Elena. I'd stake everything on that. He looked at the clock. 3:58 a.m. He needed to talk to Elena. Now. Before she woke up to find her life in ruins. Before anyone else could get to her. before the fiction Victoria had created became the truth everyone believed. He grabbed his phone and his keys and headed for the elevator. The night security guard called after him, asking if he needed his driver. Marcus didn't answer. He was already gone, taking the stairs because waiting for the elevator felt impossible. The drive to Elena's apartment took 18 minutes through empty streets. Marcus's mind raced the entire way. How had Victoria done this? How had she gotten access to Elena's computer? How had she planted evidence that looked so convincing? And more importantly, how was he going to prove Elena was innocent before everyone concluded she was guilty? He pulled up in front of her building at 4:23 a.m. The windows were dark. She was asleep, unaware that her life was being destroyed while she dreamed. Marcus took the stairs 2 at a time. Reaching the 4th floor winded and wild-eyed, he pounded on her door. Elena, I need you to wake up. It's Marcus, please. Silence. Then footsteps, the sound of locks turning. The door opened a crack, held by a chain. Elena appeared in this gap, hair disheveled from sleep, wearing an old t-shirt and pajama pants. She looked confused and worried. Marcus, what's wrong? What time is it? I need to come in. He said, we need to talk right now. She must have seen something in his face because she closed the door to unlatch the chain, then opened it fully, stepped back to let him in. The apartment was small and dark. Marcus could hear the soft sound of someone snoring in another room. Elena's father or brother, still asleep. She led him to the tiny living room, turned on a lamp. The light was harsh and unforgiving. What's going on? Elena asked, wrapping her arms around herself. You're scaring me. Marcus took a breath, tried to figure out how to say this. There was no gentle way. There was a security breach at Synapse. At 3:17 this morning, someone accessed Foundation files, sent confidential information to a competitor. Elena's face showed only confusion. What does that have to do with me? The breach, Marcus said, his voice cracking, came from your computer, using your credentials. There are emails, Elena, months of them, showing you passing secrets to Victoria Cross at Orion Systems. There's evidence of payments, of espionage. He watched her face as the words landed. Watched confusion become shock, become horror. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. No, that's not possible. I would never. I know, Marcus said quickly. I know you wouldn't, but the evidence is overwhelming. To anyone looking at it, it appears you've been working for Victoria for months. The color drained from Elena's face. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. This isn't real, she said. This is a nightmare. I'm going to wake up. Elena, listen to me, Marcus said, moving closer. I believe you. Do you understand? I believe you didn't do this. Then why are you here at 4 a.m. looking at me like my life is over? Because according to the data, it is, Marcus said bluntly. The board will demand your termination. The authorities will investigate. Victoria has set up a perfect trap. Elena's legs seemed to give out. She sank into the chair, her face in her hands. Oh God, she whispered. Oh God, what have I done? You haven't done anything, Marcus insisted. But she wasn't listening. She was somewhere else, connecting pieces he couldn't see. The gallery, she said suddenly, looking up at him. The exhibition, Sebastian. What gallery? Elena's face twisted with anguish as understanding crashed over her. Vanguard Contemporary. Sebastian Merchant, the solo show in New York. He said he needed my portfolio. All my work files, high resolution. I uploaded everything to their server last night. She looked at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. It was her, wasn't it? Victoria. The gallery was fake. Sebastian doesn't exist. It was all a trap. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Seeing Elena's dream, her most precious hope, revealed as a weapon against her, was more painful than any betrayal could have been. When did you upload the files? 8:45 last night. And the breach was detected at 3:17 this morning, Marcus said. Time for a sophisticated program to install itself and create a false history. He knelt in front of her chair, took her hands in his. Elena, I need you to think. Is there anything about that upload that seems strange? Anything at all? Her face was blank with shock, then a spark of something. Ryan, she said, my brother. He looked at the email last week, said something about it. Where is he? Sleeping, in the bedroom. Wake him up, Marcus said. We don't have much time. Ryan appeared 2 minutes later, rumpled and confused, wearing a college t-shirt and looking young and scared. Elena's mother came out too, wanting to know what was wrong. Marcus gave her the shortest possible explanation. An emergency at work. Elena needed Ryan's help with something technical. Ryan, Marcus said once they were all gathered in the living room. Elena uploaded files to a gallery server last night. You looked at the link, what did you see? Ryan was still waking up, blinking against the lamplight. Just seemed like a normal upload portal. Why? Look at it again, Marcus said. Now, I need to know if there's anything unusual about it. Elena pulled up the email on her phone, showed Ryan the link. He clicked it, studied the portal that opened. Give me a minute, Ryan said, his face going serious. He grabbed his laptop from the bedroom, started typing commands Elena and Marcus couldn't follow. 5 minutes passed. 10. Ryan's expression grew darker. This is bad, he finally said. This isn't a normal file upload. What is it? The port protocol is wrong. See this? He turned the laptop so Marcus could see lines of code. This is masked to look like a secure server, but it's actually routing through multiple proxy servers. And this is an installation script disguised as a standard security protocol. Meaning whoever created this portal used it to install something on Elena's computer the moment she connected. Probably a Trojan, something designed to access her system remotely. Can you prove it? Marcus asked urgently. Ryan's fingers flew across the keyboard. If it's still on her system, yes. But, Elena, where's your work laptop? At the office, Elena said, her voice hollow. I didn't bring it home. Marcus pulled out his phone, called Reynolds. I need you to isolate Elena Hartley's computer immediately. Don't let anyone touch it. I'm sending someone to analyze it. He looked at Ryan. Can you do forensic analysis? I can try, Ryan said. I've done some security work for my company, but I'm not an expert. You're better than nothing, Marcus said. Let's go. All of us. The drive back to Synapse was silent, except for the sound of Elena's quiet crying in the back seat. Marcus wanted to comfort her, to promise everything would be okay, but he couldn't. Not until they had proof. They arrived at the building as the sun was beginning to rise. Reynolds met them in the lobby, his expression carefully neutral as he watched Marcus arrive with Elena and her brother. The computer is secured in the security center, Reynolds said. No one's touched it. Ryan spent 3 hours analyzing Elena's laptop. Marcus and Elena sat in Marcus's office, not talking, just existing in the same space while their world hung in the balance. Elena had stopped crying. Now she just looked numb. Sarah arrived at 7 a.m., having been called by Reynolds. She took one look at Elena and wrapped her in a fierce hug. I don't believe it, Sarah said. Not for a second. The evidence says otherwise, Elena said dully. Evidence can be faked, Sarah said. You're innocent. We'll prove it. At 9:30 a.m., Ryan appeared in the doorway of Marcus's office. His face was grim but determined. I found it, he said. He pulled up his findings on Marcus's monitor, showed them the Trojan program hidden in Elena's system files, explained how it had created fake emails, planted false documents, built a history of betrayal that never happened. But here's the thing, Ryan said. Whoever designed this was good, really good. But they made one mistake. What mistake? The digital signature. Every program has one, like a fingerprint. This one was partially scrubbed, but I found fragments. Enough to trace it. He pulled up another screen. This program was created by a developer named Alex Chen. I found his profile. He's worked for several tech companies, including 6 months as a contractor for Orion Systems, ending 2 months ago. Marcus felt something cold and triumphant settle in his chest. That's our proof. That ties this directly to Victoria. It's not quite smoking gun, Ryan said. A good lawyer could argue Chen went rogue, acted alone. But combined with circumstantial evidence, Victoria's past relationship with you, her competitive motive, it's enough to cast serious doubt on Elena's guilt. Marcus turned to Reynolds, who'd been standing in the doorway listening. Is this enough to clear her? Reynolds was quiet for a long moment. It's enough to prevent criminal charges, he said. Enough to show reasonable doubt. But Marcus, the board is going to want answers. Someone breached our system using Elena's credentials. Even if she's innocent, they'll see her as a liability. Then we don't tell the board, Marcus said. You have to, Reynolds said. Protocol. I'm the CEO, Marcus said, his voice hard. And I'm invoking every bit of authority I have to keep this internal. Elena is innocent. She was targeted because of her connection to me, because Victoria Cross wanted to hurt me by destroying someone I care about. The last part slipped out before he could stop it. Elena's head snapped up, her eyes meeting his. Someone you care about? She said quietly. Yes, Marcus said simply. Someone I care about very much. The moment stretched between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said. Then Reynolds cleared his throat. I'll need a full report, he said. detailed analysis. And we'll need to confront Victoria Cross. No, Marcus said, not yet. What do you mean? Elena's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her expression shifted to something Marcus couldn't read. It's Sebastian, she said. Another email. He wants to know if I've considered his latest request. What request? Marcus asked. She read from her phone. For the gallery opening, we'd love to include a video component. Brief interviews with you discussing your artistic process, your journey, your time at RSD. Could we arrange a video call next week? Our videographer wants to capture some preliminary footage. It's not over, Elena said, looking up at Marcus. Victoria's still playing the game. She doesn't know we figured it out. Marcus looked at Ryan, at Reynolds, at Sarah. An idea was forming, dangerous and audacious and maybe insane. Then we play along, he said. We let Victoria think her trap worked, let her believe she's won, and then we spring our own trap. What are you suggesting? Reynolds asked. I'm suggesting we turn the tables, Marcus said. Elena responds to Sebastian, sets up the video call, and we trace it back to Victoria, get her on record, prove she's behind this. That's risky, Sarah said. It's the only way, Marcus replied. Otherwise, it's our word against circumstantial evidence. We need Victoria to incriminate herself. Elena stood up, her face pale but determined. If we're doing this, we do it right. I'm not just going to be bait. I want to face her. I want to look her in the eye when she realizes she lost. Marcus felt a surge of pride and fear. This was the Elena he'd first met, the fighter, the survivor. Then let's plan this carefully, he said, because we only get one shot. They worked through the day, building their counterstrike. Ryan set up trace software that could track the video call back to its source. Reynolds coordinated with a discreet cybersecurity firm to document everything for potential legal action. Sarah helped Elena prepare for the performance of her life, the innocent artist excited about her show, unaware she was being used. And Marcus called Thomas Webb, his private investigator. I need everything you can find on Victoria Cross's activities over the past 6 months, he said. Financial transactions, communications, anything that connects her to this fake gallery or to Alex Chen. And Arthur? I need it fast. We're out of time. Through it all, Elena sat in Marcus's office, going over the script they'd prepared, how to respond to Sebastian's questions, how to seem excited and naive and trusting, how to give Victoria enough rope to hang herself. At one point, when they were alone, Elena looked at Marcus. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why risk so much for me? Because you're innocent, Marcus said. That's not the only reason. No, he admitted, it's not. He came to sit beside her on the couch, close enough to touch but not touching. Because I've spent most of my adult life building walls, he said, protecting myself from needing anyone, convincing myself that success was enough. And then I saw you in that diner still fighting after everything life threw at you. And something in me woke up. You made me remember what it felt like to care about something more than quarterly profits. Elena's eyes were wet. I'm terrified, she whispered. Not just of Victoria, of this, of needing you, of building my life around someone who might leave. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus said. Not until you tell me to. And if I don't, if I never tell you to leave, then I guess you're stuck with me, Marcus said with a small smile. Elena took his hand, laced her fingers through his. We should probably wait until after we destroy Victoria to have this conversation, she said. Probably, Marcus agreed. But I needed you to know. In case this goes wrong, I needed you to know that saving you isn't about guilt or charity or balancing scales. It's about this. Us. Whatever this is. Whatever this is, Elena repeated softly. I like the sound of that. The video call with Sebastian was scheduled for the following Monday. 3 days to prepare, 3 days to build an airtight case, 3 days to figure out how to catch a predator who thought she'd already won. Victoria Cross sat in her office, watching the confirmation email from Elena Hartley appear in her inbox. The video call was arranged. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Soon, Marcus Thornton would be forced to choose between his company and the woman he'd foolishly trusted. And either choice would destroy him. If he kept Elena, the board would revolt. If he fired her, he'd have to live with knowing he'd abandoned someone who needed him, just like he'd abandoned Victoria a decade ago. The thought brought a cold satisfaction. Finally, Marcus would understand what it felt like to lose everything while the world watched. Finally, He'd know the pain Victoria had carried for 10 years. She pulled up the video call software, tested the connection one more time. Everything was ready. Victoria had no idea that on the other end, an entire team was preparing to dismantle her carefully constructed fiction. That Ryan Hartley had already traced the Trojan back to its source. That Thomas Webb had found financial records connecting Victoria to Alex Chen. That Marcus Thornton had chosen trust over data, love over logic, and was willing to bet everything on proving Elena's innocence. The game was far from over, and when the final hand was played, only one side would walk away. The storm Victoria had created was about to break, but not the way she'd planned, not even close. Monday morning arrived with the weight of everything at stake. Elena sat in Marcus's office, surrounded by the team they'd assembled over the past 72 hours. Ryan at his laptop, fingers flying across keys as he ran final tests on the trace software he'd built specifically for this moment. Reynolds reviewing legal protocols, his jaw set in that way that meant he was prepared for war. Sarah holding Elena's hand, her grip steady and sure, a silent anchor in the storm. Thomas Webb on speakerphone from his car, his gravelly voice feeding them last-minute intelligence gathered through methods Elena suspected she didn't want to know about. The video call with Sebastian Merchant was scheduled for 10 a.m. They had 2 hours to prepare, 2 hours to rehearse Elena's performance, to test the technology, to shore up their legal position, to make absolutely certain that when Victoria Cross revealed herself, they'd have everything they needed to end this. Thomas's voice crackled through the speaker, urgent and confident. "I've got the financial connection." Victoria Cross made 3 payments to Alex Chen over the past 4 months, 50,000 total, routed through a shell company registered in the Caymans, but I traced it back. She paid him to build the Trojan, paid him well. "That's our proof," Marcus said, leaning forward. "It's circumstantial," Reynolds cautioned, ever the lawyer. A good defense attorney could argue Chen went rogue, that Victoria hired him for legitimate security consulting and he misused the access. "We need more than financial transactions." "Which is why we need her on record," Marcus said. "We need Victoria herself to reveal what she's done. Admission of guilt, motive, intent. Get that? And we have an airtight case." Elena had been quiet through all of this, her face pale but composed. She'd slept maybe 3 hours in the past 2 days, running on coffee and adrenaline and the burning need to face the woman who'd tried to destroy her. Now she spoke, her voice cutting through the tactical discussion. "How do we know she'll be on the call? Maybe Sebastian is just some contractor she hired, some actor playing a role. Maybe we'll trace it back to her office, but never actually see her face." Ryan looked up from his laptop, his young face serious. "I've been analyzing the email headers, every single one. The messages from Sebastian are routed through multiple proxy servers, standard practice for hiding digital footprints. But I dug deeper. The original IP address, before it hits the proxies, bounces back to a location in downtown Seattle, specifically the Orion Systems building, 14th floor, Victoria Cross's executive suite. So she's been playing Sebastian herself," Sarah said quietly. "Or using someone in her immediate office," Ryan confirmed. "But given the personal nature of this, given how much she hates Marcus, I'd bet everything she's been handling this directly. She'll want to be there, want to watch Elena perform, want to see her play the naive artist, unaware she's being destroyed from the inside." Marcus nodded slowly, a muscle working in his jaw. "She'll want to watch. Victoria always needed to see the results of her work. When we were together, she'd stay up all night before product launches, refreshing sales numbers every 5 minutes. She couldn't delegate the satisfaction. This is the same. She won't delegate watching Elena fall apart." "You know her that well?" Elena asked quietly. "I knew her once," Marcus said, and there was old pain in his voice. "Or thought I did. The woman I dated was brilliant and ambitious and passionate, driven but not cruel. This version, the one who'd destroy an innocent person for revenge, who'd weaponize someone's dream against them, I don't know if I ever really knew her at all. Or maybe I just didn't want to see what she was capable of becoming." "People change," Sarah said gently. "Pain changes people. Unprocessed trauma, unhealed wounds. They can turn someone into a version of themselves they never meant to be." Elena stood up abruptly, began pacing Marcus's office. The morning light streaming through the windows painted everything in sharp relief. The city below was waking up, thousands of people starting their day with no idea that in this room, a small group was preparing to bring down a CEO. "I need to understand something," Elena said, stopping at the window. "Why me? I keep asking this and I can't make sense of it. If Victoria wanted to hurt Marcus, there are easier ways. Steal clients, poach employees, undercut contracts, corporate warfare that wouldn't risk federal charges. Why go to all this trouble for me? I'm nobody to her." "Because you're somebody to me," Marcus said simply, and the room went quiet. More than deals or market share or quarterly earnings. More than any client or contract. Victoria saw that. Maybe before I fully understood it myself, and she wanted to take it away. The words hung in the air, raw and honest. Sarah squeezed Elena's hand. Ryan looked at his sister with a small, knowing smile. Reynolds suddenly became very interested in his legal documents, giving them privacy in a room full of people. Elena met Marcus's eyes across the office. "After this is over," she said, "after we deal with Victoria and clear my name and handle whatever fallout comes from going to war with a Fortune 500 CEO, we need to talk about this, about what we are to each other." "I'd like that," Marcus said, his voice soft. The moment was broken by Thomas Webb's voice from the speakerphone, deliberately loud and intrusive. "Hate to interrupt what sounds like a moment, but we've got movement. My contact at Orion just texted. Victoria cleared her schedule this morning, 10 to noon, marked it as private time, no meetings, no calls, do not disturb. She's planning to be available for the video call with Elena," Marcus said. "She's going to watch in real time. Then let's give her a performance she'll never forget," Elena said, and her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "What do I need to do?" They spent the next 90 minutes in intensive preparation. Ryan walked Elena through the video software, explaining how the trace would work invisibly in the background, mapping the connection through every proxy server and encrypted tunnel until they had Victoria's exact location. Sarah helped her rehearse responses, how to seem excited and naive and trusting, how to play the role of an artist so consumed by her dream that she couldn't see the trap closing around her. Marcus reviewed the legal implications with Reynolds, making absolutely certain that everything they were doing would hold up in court, that Victoria couldn't claim entrapment or illegal surveillance. At 9:45, Elena sat in front of the camera that Ryan had positioned carefully in Marcus's office. Behind her, arranged just out of frame, sat Marcus and Sarah and Reynolds. Two members of the legal team stood in the corner with recording equipment, documenting everything. Ryan sat at his laptop station, 3 monitors displaying code and trace routes and security protocols Elena didn't understand. She looked at herself in the preview window, saw a woman who looked tired but hopeful, hair carefully styled, makeup applied with Sarah's help to hide the shadows under her eyes, a blouse she'd bought with her first real paycheck, back when she still couldn't believe this job was real. She looked like someone who was about to have her dream come true. And that's exactly what Victoria needed to see. Elena took a deep breath, smoothed her hair one final time, tried to remember what it felt like to be innocent, to trust blindly, to believe that good things happen to good people without strings attached. At exactly 10 a.m., the call connected. The screen filled with the image of a man in his 40s, distinguished looking with silver at his temples and designer glasses that probably cost more than Elena used to make in a month at the diner. He sat in what appeared to be a sophisticated gallery office, abstract art on the walls behind him, everything carefully curated to project taste and success. "Elena," the man said with a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sebastian Merchant. It's wonderful to finally see you in person, so to speak." Elena felt her stomach turn. The voice was close to the one she'd heard on the phone 2 weeks ago, but something was off. Slightly different cadence, processed through software, she realized, altered just enough that she wouldn't immediately recognize it. But underneath the digital manipulation, she could hear something familiar, a particular way of forming vowels, an East Coast accent carefully smoothed over, but not quite eliminated. Behind the camera, Ryan's fingers flew across his keyboard. Green lines of code scrolled down his monitor. He glanced at Marcus and gave a subtle nod. The trace was working. They were mapping the connection. "Thank you so much for this opportunity," Elena said, letting excitement color her voice, making herself sound young and grateful and slightly overwhelmed. I've been dreaming about a show like this since I left RISD, since I thought I'd lost my chance forever. Tell me about that, Sebastian said, leaning forward with practiced interest. The decision to leave school. That must have been incredibly difficult, a moment that changed everything. As Elena began to answer, to tell the story she'd lived, Ryan's screens filled with data. Proxy servers in 3 countries, encrypted tunnels routing through the dark web, layer after layer of digital obfuscation designed to hide the call's true origin. But Ryan's software was better. Piece by piece, it stripped away the camouflage. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, Elena said. And this part was true, required no acting. My father was diagnosed with a degenerative disease. He needed constant care. My mother was working herself to exhaustion. My brother was still in high school. There was no choice, really. I had to come home. But you gave up so much, Sebastian said, and Elena heard something in the voice now. An edge, a hint of bitterness carefully controlled. Your talent, your future, your dreams, all sacrificed for family duty. I don't see it as sacrifice, Elena said carefully. They needed me. I loved them. You do what you have to do for the people you love. How noble, Sebastian said. And now the bitterness was unmistakable. How absolutely noble. The dutiful daughter, the selfless sister. Tell me, Elena, did it ever make you angry? Watching other artists succeed while you scrubbed floors? Watching people with half your talent build careers while you built nothing? Elena felt a flash of a real anger, but channeled it into her performance. Of course it made me angry, she admitted. There were days I resented all of it. My father's illness, my family's need, the unfairness of having talent that didn't matter because I had responsibilities. But anger doesn't change reality. You endure, you survive, you wait for a second chance. And then Marcus Thornton gave you that second chance, Sebastian said. Marcus's name pronounced with careful neutrality that somehow conveyed volumes. How fortunate. How incredibly convenient. The boy who won the scholarship you deserved, grown into a billionaire with a guilty conscience, coming to save you. He didn't save me, Elena said, her voice firming. He gave me a job. I did the work. Behind the camera, Ryan scribbled on a notepad and held it up. Almost there. 90 seconds. Elena kept Sebastian talking, asking questions about the exhibition timeline, about the promotional plans, about which pieces would be featured. Played the eager artist while her brother worked to trace this call through every digital dead end until they had absolute proof of where it originated. Then Sebastian said something that shifted the tone completely. I've been thinking about the narrative for your show, he said, lacing his fingers together. Your journey from RISD to caregiving to corporate design. It's compelling in a way. But I wonder if we're being honest about what it really is. What do you mean? Elena asked. The Marcus Thornton angle, Sebastian said. And now there was no hiding the venom. The man who won the scholarship you should have had, who built an empire while you washed dishes and served coffee to people who didn't see you as human, who then, 10 years later, offered you a job that, let's be completely honest, you weren't remotely qualified for. It's a story about power and guilt and the ways successful men try to buy redemption with other people's lives. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but not from sadness, from fury at the presumption, the reductiveness, the absolute certainty with which this stranger was telling her who she was and what she'd earned. That's not the story, she said, her voice shaking. Isn't it? Sebastian leaned closer to the camera. A brilliant woman sacrifices everything for her family. A mediocre man gets everything handed to him because his family's suffering was judged more important than her talent. Years later, he throws her a bone and expects eternal gratitude, expects her to be his proof that billionaires can be good people, his redemption project, his pet artist. It's the oldest story there is, Elena. Powerful men using desperate women to feel better about themselves. Marcus wasn't mediocre, Elena said, and her voice was hard now, the performance cracking. He earned his success. He built something real, and I'm not some charity case grateful for scraps from his table. Then what are you? Sebastian asked, and for just a second, the mask slipped. The professional curator voice gave way to something rawer, more personal. What are you to him, Elena? An employee? A friend? A project? Or just another way to ease his guilty conscience about leaving everyone behind while he climbed? Behind the camera, Ryan held up a sign. Got it. Trace to Orion Systems, 14th floor, Victoria Cross's office. Marcus stepped into frame. Hello, Victoria, he said quietly. On screen, Sebastian froze. The carefully constructed image held for 3 long seconds. Then slowly, the picture blurred and shifted. When it resolved, Sebastian Merchant was gone. In his place sat Victoria Cross. She was beautiful in a way that spoke of money and maintenance and absolute control. Dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, suit that probably cost $5,000, makeup flawless. But her eyes gave her away. They held a decade of pain and rage and loss so profound it had curdled into something toxic. She looked at Marcus through the camera, and her smile was all sharp edges. Marcus, she said, her voice different now, no more careful modulation, just Victoria, raw and bitter and triumphant. I wondered when you'd figure it out. Wondered if you'd trust the data or trust her. Nice to see you chose sentiment over sense. Very unlike you. Why? Marcus asked, and the single word carried the weight of 10 years. Victoria laughed, and it was the saddest sound Elena had ever heard. Why? Because you destroyed me, Marcus. 10 years ago, you looked me in the eye and told me you needed to build your empire alone, that you couldn't have a partner, that I wasn't enough for you. That's not what I said, Marcus replied, his voice strained. It's what I heard, Victoria shot back, leaning toward her camera. Do you remember that night? Tosca, the Italian place where we had our first date. I proposed we merge our companies, equal partners, combine our tech, our talent, our vision. We could have built something revolutionary together. And you said no. I said I wasn't ready. Marcus corrected. You said you needed to do it alone. Victoria's voice cracked, years of buried pain surfacing. You said partnerships require compromise, and you couldn't afford to compromise your vision. Those were your exact words, Marcus. I've replayed them in my head 10,000 times, in therapy, in the middle of the night, every time I see your face in the news. I needed to do this alone, like I was a weakness, a distraction, an obstacle to your precious vision. I was 25 years old, Marcus said. I was terrified of failing, of losing control, of making the wrong decision and watching everything collapse. I didn't know how to share that burden. So you chose the company over me, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face now. Over us, over the possibility of building something together. And for 10 years, I've watched you build everything we could have created as partners. Watched you succeed while I fought for every inch of ground. Watched every tech blog call you the golden boy, the visionary, the future of the industry. While I was the bitter ex, the woman who couldn't hold on to Marcus Thornton. You built Orion, Marcus said. You're a CEO. You're successful in your own right. I'm successful because I had to be, Victoria practically shouted. Because I had to prove I didn't need you, that I could compete with you, that your rejection didn't break me. But it did, Marcus. It shattered me, and I spent 10 years pretending it didn't. Just kept building and fighting and trying to beat you at your own game. And every time Synapse pulled ahead, every quarter you outperformed me, it felt like you were rejecting me all over again. Telling me I wasn't good enough. Would never be good enough. So you decided to hurt me back, Marcus said quietly. I decided to make you feel what I felt, Victoria corrected, wiping angrily at her tears. Watching someone you care about slip away, realizing you're losing them and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You built your empire alone, Marcus. Exactly like you wanted. But I watched you in those interviews, saw you at those conferences. You were lonely, miserable under all that success. You had everything, and it meant nothing. And I was glad. God help me, I was glad you were suffering. Sarah stepped into frame beside Elena, her voice calm and professional. And then Marcus found Elena, Sarah said. And that made you angrier, didn't it? Victoria turned her attention to Sarah, and her expression was complicated. Pain and envy and something almost like recognition. He couldn't have a partnership with me, Victoria said. His equal, someone who'd challenge him, push back, demand real collaboration. But he could rescue poor, grateful Elena, The perfect redemption project. She'd never question him, never threaten his control. She'd just be eternally thankful that the great Marcus Thornton noticed her. That's not fair, Elena said, finding her voice. Isn't it? Victoria asked, turning her gaze to Elena. He offered you a job you weren't qualified for, Elena. Don't mistake me, I've seen your work, you have talent. But lead concept artist for a major foundation after 10 years serving coffee? That's not merit-based hiring. That's guilt in action. She continued, her voice getting harder. He gave you a salary you hadn't earned, benefits that saved your family, made you dependent on him for everything that matters. Your father's medical care, your mother's rest, your brother's future, your own sense of worth. That's not partnership, that's not even friendship. That's ownership. You're his proof that billionaires can be good people, his walking, talking redemption, and you're so grateful you can't even see it. Elena felt the words land like physical blows. Because wasn't there truth buried in them? Hadn't she wondered, in her darkest moments, if she deserved this job? If Marcus had created a position just for her, shaped to her specific circumstances? If she was less an employee and more a project, something he was building to prove to himself he wasn't the person who'd let his mother die alone. But then she thought about the logo, about the weeks she'd spent failing, trying, failing again, until she created something that made a room full of hard-edged business people stand up and applaud. She thought about Sarah treating her like a peer from day one, critiquing her work honestly, expecting excellence. She thought about the foundation fellows who thanked her not because she was connected to Marcus Thornton, but because she'd created something that spoke to their lived experience. She thought about quitting the diner, not because Marcus told her to, but because she chose to. Standing up to Patterson not because someone was protecting her, but because she was done being small. Taking this job not because she had no other options, but because she wanted it. Wanted to create again, wanted to matter again. Every choice had been hers. You're wrong, Elena said, her voice steady now. Marcus gave me an opportunity, but I did the work. Every design, every campaign, every piece of art I created for the foundation was mine. Not a gift, not charity, my contribution, my value. And the fact that you can't see that, can't imagine that I might actually deserve what I've earned, that says more about you than it does about me. She leaned toward the camera. You're in pain, Victoria. I understand that. Someone you loved rejected you and it's poisoned everything since. But destroying me doesn't heal that wound. Making Marcus suffer doesn't erase what he did to you. It just creates more pain, more victims, more people carrying damage they didn't earn. I'm small? Victoria asked, her voice breaking. I've built a company that competes with Synapse. I've proven I didn't need Marcus Thornton. I'm a CEO, a leader, someone who fought for every inch of success. And you're calling me small? You spent months creating a fake gallery, Sarah said gently, stepping fully into frame. You hired a developer to build a Trojan. You researched Elena's life, found her greatest vulnerability, and weaponized it against her. All to hurt a man who rejected you a decade ago. That's not strength, Victoria. That's unprocessed trauma. That's pain you never dealt with, grown into something that's eating you alive. Victoria stared at Sarah, and for a moment, the rage cracked. Underneath was something raw and desperate. You have no idea what it was like, Victoria whispered, watching him choose everything over me, watching him become everything I dreamed we'd be, together, without me. I do know, Marcus said quietly, and Victoria's eyes snapped to him. Because I made the same choice. I chose success over connection, achievement over love, building things over being human. And it left me empty, Victoria, successful and completely empty. You're right. I was miserable. I had everything the world said mattered, and I wanted to drive my car off a bridge half the time just to feel something. Then you should thank me, Victoria said bitterly. I gave you Elena, something to care about, someone to save, a purpose beyond profit margins. You gave me a reminder, Marcus said, that choosing data over trust, logic over faith, was what made me lonely in the first place. When I saw Elena's name on that security report at 3 a.m, every piece of evidence said she'd betrayed me. The timestamps were perfect. The paper trail was immaculate. Any rational person would have fired her on the spot. And I chose to believe in her anyway. He paused, his voice soft but certain. Not because I'm naive, not because I was blinded by feelings, but because I've learned that the most important things in life can't be quantified in spreadsheets. Sometimes you have to trust your heart even when your head is screaming at you to protect yourself. That's what Elena taught me, how to be human again. Behind the camera, Ryan had been working steadily through the confrontation. Now he spoke up. "We have everything we need," he said. "Full recording of this conversation. Trace confirmed to your exact location. Financial records linking you to Alex Chen, the developer who built the Trojan. IP evidence showing the fake gallery server originated from Orion infrastructure. Admission on tape that you created the false identity and planted the evidence. That's conspiracy, corporate espionage, wire fraud, identity theft, and about 6 other felonies." Victoria's face went pale as the reality sank in.
You were recording this entire time.
"Every second," Reynolds said, stepping into view. "And we've already forwarded encrypted copies to our legal team and to law enforcement authorities." "You're done, Ms. Cross. Finished. We have enough to send you to federal prison for a decade." "Wait," Victoria said, and panic replaced bitterness in her voice. "Wait, please. Marcus, we can talk about this. We can work something out." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Elena could see the war in his face, the old affection fighting with betrayal, the memory of who Victoria used to be versus who she'd become. "You tried to destroy Elena's life," he said, his voice cold. "An innocent woman who'd never done anything to you except exist in my orbit. You weaponized her dreams. You created months of false evidence designed to send her to prison. You showed no mercy, no compassion, no recognition that she was a human being with a family who needed her. Why should I show you any mercy now?" "Because you're better than me," Victoria whispered, and it was the first completely honest thing she'd said. "You always were. That's part of what I hated. That even when you were wrong, when you hurt me, you were still fundamentally good. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Marcus. I don't deserve it. I'm asking for a chance. Any chance." She looked at Elena through the camera. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know it means nothing. I know it doesn't undo what I did. But I'm sorry. You were right. I'm in pain, and I let it turn me into someone I don't recognize. Someone who hurts innocent people because I can't hurt the person who actually damaged me." Marcus looked at Elena. "It's not my choice," he said. "Elena is the victim here. She decides what happens next." The room went quiet. All eyes turned to Elena, Ryan at his computers, Sarah holding her hand, Reynolds with his legal documents, Marcus standing beside her chair, all of them waiting to see what she would choose. Elena looked at Victoria's image on the screen, saw a woman who'd spent 10 years building armor around her pain, who'd turned heartbreak into ambition and ambition into cruelty because she didn't know any other way to survive, who was brilliant and accomplished and completely, utterly broken. Part of Elena wanted revenge, wanted to watch Victoria lose everything, wanted justice raw and unfiltered. This woman had tried to destroy her, had weaponized her greatest dream, had almost succeeded in taking away everything Elena had rebuilt from ashes. But then Elena thought about sitting on her father's bedroom floor, watching him struggle with buttons his hands could no longer manage, and choosing to stay, choosing to sacrifice her future because love mattered more than art. She thought about Marcus offering her a job despite having every logical reason to stay detached, about Sarah sharing her grief to help Elena feel less alone, about Sophie flying to Seattle just to reconnect with a friend she thought had abandoned her. She thought about all the people who'd shown her grace when judgment would have been easier, who'd chosen compassion over convenience, who'd helped her rebuild not because she deserved it, but because they believed everyone deserved a second chance. "I want 3 things, Elena said, her voice clear and steady. Victoria nodded frantically. "Anything, whatever you want. First, you resign from Orion, publicly, effective immediately. You cite personal reasons, take full responsibility for any damage the scandal causes the company, and you walk away from tech entirely. You don't get to rebuild your career in this industry after what you've done." Victoria's face showed pain, but she nodded. "Second," Elena continued, "you make a donation to the Synapse Foundation, $2 million, anonymous if you prefer, but it has to happen within 1 week. That money funds the Elena Hartley Fellowship for Renaissance artists, people who've had to step away from creative careers for family reasons, people like me. their dreams get a second chance because you destroyed yours. Victoria was crying now, but she nodded again. I can do that, I will. Third, Elena said, and her voice softened. You get help, real help, intensive therapy, treatment for whatever wound you've been carrying that made you think destroying someone else would heal it. Because Victoria, I don't think you're evil. I think you're in pain. I think you made terrible choices because you were hurt and angry and you didn't know how to process it. She leaned closer to the camera. I know what it's like to be so consumed by pain that you can't see any other way forward. To feel like the world took everything from you and you're owed something back. I spent 10 years angry at everyone. My father for getting sick, my family for needing me, Marcus for winning that scholarship, the universe for being unfair. That anger was eating me alive, and then someone showed me kindness I hadn't earned, offered me hope I didn't deserve, believed in me when logic said not to. And it changed everything. Maybe it can change something for you too, if you let it. Victoria was openly sobbing now, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. Why are you being kind to me? I tried to destroy you. I almost succeeded. You should hate me. Maybe, Elena said. But hate takes energy I don't want to spend on you. And honestly, watching you sit there, successful and miserable and so angry you can't breathe, that's punishment enough. I'm free, Victoria. I have family who loves me, work that fulfills me, a future I'm building on my own terms. What do you have? Money and rage and a decade-old heartbreak that's poisoned everything since. She paused, letting that sink in. I choose to be kind because I want to, not because you deserve it, because I'm tired of carrying other people's damage. I'm choosing grace for me. If it helps you, wonderful. If it doesn't, that's on you. Marcus stepped closer to the camera, his expression unreadable. Here's what's going to happen, he said to Victoria. You have 48 hours to do everything Elena asked. Resign, donate, start therapy. You also provide our legal team with a full written confession, every detail of what you did. That confession stays sealed as long as you comply with Elena's terms. If you don't comply, or if you ever come near Elena or the foundation again, we hand everything to the FBI and you face federal prosecution. Your choice. I'll do it, Victoria said immediately. All of it, I promise. Marcus, I'm sorry for everything, for hurting you, for hurting her, for wasting 10 years on bitterness. I'm sorry too, Marcus said quietly, for not seeing how much I hurt you, for choosing ambition over everything else, for being so afraid of losing control that I lost you instead. I can't change that, but I can choose differently now. The video call ended, the screen went black, and Elena sat in the sudden silence of Marcus's office, surrounded by people who'd fought for her, who'd believed in her, who'd proven that truth could win even when lies had a 10-year head start. She burst into tears. Sarah was there immediately, arms around her. Marcus knelt beside her chair. Ryan came over and put his hand on her shoulder. And Elena cried not from sadness, but from relief so profound it felt like being reborn. Her name was cleared. Her dream was safe. The nightmare was over. We did it, Sarah whispered. You did it. The next 48 hours were chaos, barely contained. Victoria Cross resigned from Orion Systems in a brief press conference, her face professionally composed, but her eyes dead. She cited personal health issues and the need to step back from the demands of leadership. The tech press went wild with speculation. $2 million appeared in the Synapse Foundation's accounts within 36 hours, accompanied by a letter establishing the Elena Hartley Fellowship with detailed terms. And Victoria's lawyers delivered a 50-page confession that detailed everything, leaving no room for doubt about Elena's innocence. Reynolds presented the evidence to the Synapse board in a closed-door session that lasted 4 hours. The board was furious that their security had been compromised, impressed by how Marcus had handled it, and unanimous in their support of Elena. They voted to issue a public statement clearing her name and praising her work. 3 days after the video call, Marcus held a press conference. The media room at Synapse headquarters was packed with journalists and cameras, everyone eager for details about the scandal that had rocked the tech world. Marcus stood at the podium, looking tired but resolute. Last week, Synapse Dynamics was the target of a sophisticated corporate espionage attempt, he began. The attack was designed to frame one of our employees, Foundation lead concept artist Elena Hartley, as the perpetrator. The actual source was a competitor who targeted Ms. Hartley because of her personal connection to me. He paused, let that sink in. I want to be absolutely clear. Elena Hartley is completely innocent. She was the victim of a calculated, malicious attempt to destroy her career and damage our company. Thanks to excellent work by our security team and Ms. Hartley's own family, we identified the real source and obtained a full confession. The reporters shouted questions. Marcus answered several, careful to avoid naming Victoria publicly while making it clear that justice had been served. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped aside and invited Elena to the podium. She walked up, looking small in front of all those cameras, but she held her head high. I'm grateful to everyone who believed in me when the evidence suggested they shouldn't, she said, her voice steady. To Marcus Thornton, who chose trust over data. To Dr. Sarah Chen, who reminded me that integrity matters more than appearances. To my brother Ryan, whose technical skills proved my innocence. And to everyone who understands that sometimes the truth is worth fighting for, even when it's hard. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. This experience taught me something important. Your worth isn't determined by what others think of you, or what evidence suggests about you. It's determined by who you are when everything's at stake. I'm an artist, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a survivor. And I'm someone who believes in second chances. For everyone, including the person who tried to destroy me. The reporters went wild with questions. Elena answered a few, deflecting most. The story went viral within hours, not just the corporate espionage angle, but Elena's response, her choice of grace over revenge. The fellowship established with Victoria's money. Social media exploded, with people calling her everything from naive to saintly. Within a week, Elena had interview requests from major publications, interest from galleries who'd never heard of her before, and a social media following that grew by thousands daily. But none of that mattered as much as what happened on a quiet Sunday morning 2 weeks after the press conference. Marcus picked Elena up at her apartment. They drove to Pike Place Market like they'd done before, when the world was simpler. Walking through the weekend crowds felt surreal now. Vendors recognized Elena from the news. People asked for photos. It took them an hour to make it through the market to their bench overlooking the water. They sat with coffee and pastries, watching the ferries cross Puget Sound, and for a while neither of them spoke. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. I need to tell you something. Elena looked at him, waiting. I'm in love with you, he said simply. Have been for longer than I probably should admit. But I was scared to say it. Scared of complicating things, scared of you feeling obligated because of the job. Scared of losing you if I was wrong about what this was between us. He turned to face her fully. But watching you stand up to Victoria, watching you choose compassion when you had every right to choose vengeance, watching you be brave and brilliant and kind even when your life was falling apart, I realized being scared didn't matter. I'm in love with you, Elena, and I needed you to know, even if it changes nothing, even if you don't feel the same way, you deserve to know the truth. Elena set down her coffee, took both his hands in hers. I'm in love with you too, she said, and watched relief flood his face. And I'm terrified. Because the last time I built my life around someone else's choices, I was 19 and everything fell apart. Because you have so much power in my life, Marcus. You're my boss, my benefactor, the person who made all of this possible. If we do this, and it doesn't work, what happens to me? You keep your job, Marcus said immediately. That's yours. Earned and deserved and completely separate from whatever happens between us personally. I'll have legal draw-up documents making it explicit. Your position is secure regardless of our relationship status. That's not what scares me, Elena said. I'm not afraid of losing the job. I'm afraid of losing myself again. Of making decisions based on what you want instead of what I want. Of becoming dependent in ways I can't even see until it's too late. Then don't, Marcus said gently. Build your life around your own choices. I'll be here, supporting them, cheering for them, but they're yours. I don't want to save you. I don't want to fix you or complete you. I just want to be with you. As equals. As partners. Partners, Elena repeated softly. If you want, Marcus said. No pressure, no obligation, just possibility. We can take it as slow as you need. Date like normal people. Figure out what this is without stakes or power dynamics or any of the complicated stuff. Elena thought about the past months, about rediscovering her art, about Sarah's mentorship and Sophie's friendship, about standing in front of cameras and claiming her own story, about choosing Grace for Victoria because she wanted to, not because anyone expected it. She'd rebuilt herself, not because Marcus had saved her, but because he'd given her space to save herself. I want this, she said. The possibility, the partnership, you, but slowly, one day at a time, learning each other as equals instead of rescuer and rescued. I can do slow, Marcus said with a smile. Can I kiss you? Elena asked. Please, Marcus said. They kissed on that bench overlooking Puget Sound, surrounded by Sunday morning market-goers and crying seagulls and the smell of coffee and flowers and salt water. It wasn't their first kiss of passion, but it was their first kiss of promise, the first acknowledgement of what they could become together if they were brave enough to try. When they pulled apart, Elena rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. What do we do now? She asked. Whatever we want, Marcus said, wrapping his arm around her. Together. 6 months later, the Synapse Foundation held its annual gala. The ballroom glittered with donors and partners and scholarship recipients. The walls displayed projections of Elena's designs. Marcus gave his annual speech, eyes finding Elena in the crowd. She wore deep green, looking confident in a way she never had before. This year, he said, we launched the Elena Hartley Fellowship for Renaissance Artists, 15 artists annually who've stepped away from creative careers. We provide support, space, mentorship, and the message that interrupted dreams aren't failed dreams. The room erupted in applause. Our first cohort just completed their year. 5 have gallery representation. 3 sold work to major collectors. All rediscovered parts of themselves they thought were lost forever. After dinner, Elena found herself on the rooftop terrace. Marcus joined her with champagne. Big night? He said. Big year, she corrected. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights reflect off Elliott Bay. Sophie called yesterday, Elena said. Her gallery wants to do a 2-person show, her paintings and my mixed media. Not because of the foundation or the press or any of it, just because our work speaks to each other. That's incredible, Marcus said. When? Next spring, 4 months to prepare. Are you ready? Elena thought about the studio Marcus had built for her on the top floor of the Synapse building. The space that was hers alone, where she created work that had nothing to do with the foundation or pleasing anyone. She thought about the pieces she'd been making, raw and honest and vulnerable, about the fear and the joy and the terror of creating for herself again. Yeah, she said, I think I am. Marcus set down his champagne and pulled a small box from his pocket. Elena's breath caught. Before you panic, Marcus said quickly, this isn't what you think. I mean, it is eventually, but not yet. This is something else. He opened the box. Inside was a key on a simple chain. It's to a house, Marcus explained, in your neighborhood, near your family. 3 bedrooms, accessible first floor for your dad, yard for your mom's garden. I bought it 6 weeks ago. The deed is in your name, yours alone, not a gift from me, your asset, your security. So you never have to worry about losing your home if anything happens between us. Elena stared at the key, tears streaming down her face. Marcus, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Marcus said gently, because you've earned financial security, and because I never want you to feel trapped with me out of economic necessity. I want you to choose to be with me every single day because you want to, not because you need to. She took the key, felt its weight. Ask me in 6 months, she said. Ask you what? The thing you want to ask, with the ring you haven't bought yet. Ask me in 6 months, after I've had my show and lived in my own house and proven to both of us that I can stand on my own. Then ask me, and I'll say yes. Marcus smiled, pulled her close. 6 months, he agreed, but I already know the answer. So do I, Elena whispered. 1 year later, in a small ceremony with family and close friends, Marcus would ask. Elena would say yes. They'd marry with Sarah officiating, Sophie as maid of honor, Ryan walking Elena down the aisle, and David in his wheelchair crying tears of joy. The foundation would grow and change thousands of lives. Elena's art would hang in galleries nationwide. She'd build a career on her own terms, proving interrupted dreams could become fulfilled destinies. Victoria Cross would complete therapy and eventually write Elena a letter acknowledging her harm. Elena would write back, not friendship, but understanding, two women learning to heal. And through it all, Marcus and Elena would return to their bench at Pike Place Market on Sunday mornings, would buy flowers and coffee, would remember the night everything changed, when they'd both chosen to believe that broken things could be repaired, that lost people could be found, that grace was stronger than vengeance and love was worth the risk. It wasn't a fairy tale, life was still hard, but they faced it together, as partners, as equals, building not an empire or legacy, but a life worth living with someone worth loving. And that was everything.